Chapter 11:18 Invincible Paragon Saint. Chapter 11:18 Invincible Paragon Saint. According to that unreliable stone tablet, the next trial is a labyrinth. Moreover, we can't form teams and can only attempt it ourselves. Do you want to enter the Black Tower? Ling Han asked. Shui Yinyu pondered for a moment before shaking her head and saying, No, I want to attempt it myself. It might be dangerous, Ling Han warned. I know, Shui Yinyu said with a nod. Then, she turned to Ling Han and earnestly said, I don't want to become a burden to you. I want to be able to help you. Ling Han felt moved upon feeling her love for him. However, what he said next was still quite out of touch. Then let's have kids first. Damn pervert. Shui Yinyu rolled her eyes at him. Ling Han laughed cheerily, and he stopped to pull her into an embrace. Be careful. I will. Ling Han pecked her on the forehead before striding into the second level. Shui Yinyu faltered for a moment. Then, she suddenly noticed that two divine seals had appeared in her pocket. They were none other than the Vajra seal and the Lion seal. Before she could even speak, Ling Han had already disappeared behind the turn in the stairs. She hurriedly ran after him, yet she saw that he had already entered the second floor. Walls that were built from stone lay before her and stretched for a long distance. They appeared especially messy and disorderly. This was already the second floor of the tower, and she had become separated from Ling Han. This wasn't the first time that they had come across such a situation. When they entered this tomb, those at the Mountain River tier, Sun Moon tier, and Heavenly Body tier had already been separated from each other. She took the two divine seals out from her pocket. Ling Han had only left these with her because he was worried about her. Moreover, he was afraid that she would reject them, and thus he immediately ran off after stuffing them into her pocket. He gave her absolutely no chance to speak. Shui Yinyu stared at the divine seals absent-mindedly. Then, she remembered that Ling Han still had the Black Tower, meaning that he would probably be safe. Only then did she regain her senses and start to analyze the stone formation before her. Ling Han was also analyzing the stone formation in the same place, though it seemed as if he were in a different dimension. There was no doubt that this was the labyrinth. Huh? It can move. After studying the formation for a while, Ling Han discovered that the stone walls would move by themselves. As a result, the layout of the paths would completely change. We have to pass this labyrinth in under 2 hours. Do we have to find the pattern that governs the movement of these stone walls? A confident smile appeared on Ling Han's face. He had ventured into numerous ancient sites during the last few years of his previous life. During that time, he had come across countless formations. Although the level of the formation before him was much higher, his cultivation level and divine sense were also much more powerful than before. The more powerful one's divine sense, the more powerful one's deduction and inference abilities would become. These were of utmost importance for alchemy, puppet creation, formation setting, and formation cracking. Ling Han's eyes moved about slightly as he stared at the formation. As time went on, the speed at which his eyes moved also increased. This was because he was following and remembering all the changes in the formation. After he remembered them, he would start to analyze the patterns that governed their movement. If he entered the Black Tower and performed comprehension under the reincarnation tree, 1 day's worth of comprehension would be equivalent to an entire year's outside. Thus, he would naturally be able to crack this formation in an extremely short amount of time. However, the time limit meant that this formation could be cracked in under 2 hours. There were rewards at stake, and he was confident that he would be able to crack this formation without any external help. His mind was already whirring, and a smile quickly tugged at the corners of his mouth. There are 36 transformations, and there are also 7 areas designed to trick people. If one enters those places, they'll definitely be trapped. I'm ready now. Ling Han walked into the stone labyrinth. He headed left for a while, and then right. He appeared especially relaxed, and he passed through the stone formation in only around an hour. Another large hall appeared before him. Xiao Sisi, Duan, and the others who had set off before him had all arrived here already. Even Xiao Wuk had already arrived. Prodigies were prodigies, after all, and they were outstanding even in the field of deduction. However, part of the reason was because the formation had been relatively simple. As such, it hadn't been able to separate the skills of the prodigies apart. If the difficulty of the formation had been increased dramatically, perhaps differences in completion time would reach several or even dozens of years. The hall before Ling Han also had a stone tablet. Ling Han nodded in greeting to Xiao Sisi and the others first, and then he walked up to the stone tablet and said, "I've passed. So where is my reward?" "Brat, remember to call me senior," the stone tablet said angrily. Ling Han took this opportunity to ask, "What should I refer to senior as?" Xiao Sisi and the others all perked their ears up. They were also keen to learn about this large tomb's origin. Being able to construct a tomb among the stars and planets was far too astonishing. Haha, back in the day, I had galloped across the universe and been invincible for a generation. You people can refer to me as the Invincible Paragon Saint, the stone tablet said. So shameless. Everyone shook their heads in their minds. They acknowledged that this person had been supremely powerful when alive. However, it was a bit over the top for him to call himself invincible. The world was vast, and powerful beings were as many as the clouds. Who could be truly invincible? Moreover, even saints couldn't escape death. If one were invincible, could they overcome the great Tao of heaven and earth? "Oh, so it's Senior Invincible," Ling Han said. However, there wasn't a shred of respect in his voice, and this made the Invincible Paragon Saint feel extremely vexed. Bunch of brats. Back in the day, I might forget about it. A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. The Invincible Paragon Saint humphed and said, "Take it. It's your reward." Ling Han looked over, only to find another vial of pills on the ground. "What is it this time?" he asked. "Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill," the Invincible Paragon Saint said. "Again?" Ling Han said with a grimace. His expression was one of great displeasure. To most people, alchemical pills were incredibly rare and precious. In fact, high-level alchemical pills would even trigger fights and potentially lead to deaths. Such occurrences weren't rare. However, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor. After receiving the corresponding pill recipes, what pills couldn't he refine? Thus, he despised alchemical pill rewards the most. In addition, this was actually the Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill again. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The Invincible Paragon Saint repeated the word wrong 3 times to emphasize his point. This isn't the same Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill as last time. Rather, this Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill can provide one with 1 star more power than the previous Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill. Although you emphasized your point, and although you spoke in riddles, this still doesn't change the fact that it's simply a Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill. It's merely of a slightly higher quality. Ling Han shook his head in disappointment. He was an alchemist, so he was naturally aware that, alchemists would end up with alchemical pills of differing levels even when refining the same cauldron of pills. Some pills would reach the standard 10 stars, while other pills would only reach 8, 7, or even just 5 stars. Of course, such kinds of alchemists made up 99% of the alchemy world. In fact, this was nothing surprising. It was just that Ling Han's expertise in alchemy was already too high, so he couldn't help but look down on such kinds of ordinary alchemists. "I'll take them back if you don't want them." The Invincible Paragon Saint was even more displeased than Ling Han. Ling Han hurriedly put the pills away. These were for free anyway, so why wouldn't he take them? "What's the next trial like?" he asked. The Invincible Paragon Saint humphed and said, "You want me to give you special treatment with that attitude of yours? In your dreams." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Everyone treats you with respect, and only I'm different from the ordinary. Isn't this enough reason for you to open the back door for me?" The Invincible Paragon Saint was speechless for a moment. Then, he sighed. "I suddenly realized that you're more of a *TTY brat than I initially thought." Chapter 11:19 Deciphering a Sword Strike. Chapter 11:19 Deciphering a Sword Strike. Ling Han's face involuntarily darkened. Why did the stone tablet suddenly curse him? Could they still communicate in a civil manner? Xiao Sisi and the others all covered their mouths and laughed. They truly admired Ling Han's courage. Although this invincible Paragon saint had died long ago, with only a wisp of his will remaining, there were clearly countless astounding formations spread throughout this large tomb. Moreover, this will could control and manipulate these formations that were powerful enough to contain heavenly body-tier elites. Thus, none of them dared to show any disrespect before the stone tablet. They were all afraid of his might. This had nothing to do with whether one was prodigious or prideful. In the cultivation world, strength was all that mattered. If one didn't possess enough strength, what right did they have to be proud? However, Ling Han was able to speak freely before this invincible Paragon saint. This caused the others to label him as reckless in their minds, though they also couldn't help but feel admiration for his courage. Most importantly, it seemed as if Ling Han was to the invincible Paragon saint's liking. Otherwise, the invincible Paragon saint would have directly killed him instead of calling him a *tty brat. Since you begged me, I'll be kind and tell you. A soft glow radiated from the stone tablet, and the invincible Paragon saint said, "The third trial requires you to decipher a sword strike." Decipher a sword strike? How does that work? Ling Han asked. The invincible sword saint became a little impatient, and he said, "You still don't understand? You have to decipher a sword strike, and if you succeed, you'll pass the trial. If not, then you can *SS off." Is there a reward for passing this trial? Ling Han continued to ask. The invincible Paragon saint was almost rendered speechless. Can't you act more like the prodigy that you are? Why are you always thinking about rewards? A person shouldn't be too focused on material benefits. Sigh, forget about it. It's useless even if I ask. Ling Han shrugged his shoulders and continued. It's definitely going to be purple pattern mountain river pills again. They'll only be of slightly higher quality at best and elevate one's power by 3 stars. The invincible Paragon saint had just been about to speak, yet his words were forcefully shoved back into his mouth. That was indeed the reward for passing the third trial. Fuck. Those pills can elevate your power by 3 stars. That's extremely impressive if you're battling against someone at the same cultivation level as yourself. Yet, you're still not satisfied? However, as a senior, how could he debate such matters with a junior? *SS off. Hurry up and *SS off. I feel angry just looking at your *TTY face, he said in irritation. Calm down. I still need to wait for someone. Ling Han sat cross-legged on the floor, and he also placed the Azura Demon Emperor back into the Black Tower. He was going to wait for Shui Yinyu to arrive. Although the labyrinth wasn't dangerous, Ling Han would remain worried for as long as he didn't see her arrive. *TTY brat, the invincible Paragon saint murmured. You definitely can't be that person. Otherwise, I'll feel extremely vexed. Xiao Sisi and the others didn't wait with Ling Han. Instead, they entered the third level of the tower to challenge the Deciphering Sword Strike trial. After waiting for another hour or so, Ling Han finally saw Shui Yinyu arrive. This seductive beauty's face was filled with disappointment. Although she had successfully passed the labyrinth, she had exceeded the 2-hour time limit. Although she wasn't a first-rate prodigy at the Scarlet Heaven Academy, she was at least talented enough to be called a prodigy. In this large tomb, however, she discovered that she was merely holding Ling Han back. See, hadn't Ling Han been waiting for her just then? Wife, what unnecessary thoughts are running through your mind? Ling Han embraced her lightly and comforted. Many people only experience success later in their lives. Moreover, as long as your husband is powerful enough, I can find you all kinds of natural treasures. Perhaps you can eat them and instantly become a saint. Shui Yinyu rolled her eyes at him. Did he know how to comfort people? Wasn't this hurting her confidence even more? Hee *TTY brat, your thoughts are quite fanciful, the invincible Paragon saint suddenly said. Do you think that natural treasures that can instantly elevate one to the level of saint are as common as cabbage? Do you think you'll be able to get your hands on them? Ling Han's interest was piqued, and he asked, Are there really godly treasures that can instantly transform one into a saint? He had only said that to comfort Shui Yinyu. Had he genuinely guessed right? Heaven and earth are so vast. What kinds of treasures don't exist? The invincible Paragon saint sighed in emotion and said, Heaven and earth have birthed things so poisonous that even saints will drop dead upon coming into contact with them. On the flip side, heaven and earth have also birthed things so wonderful that even mortals can shoot to the sky in a single step. Judging by what you've said, talent and whatnot are of no importance compared to pure luck, Ling Han concluded. You're not entirely wrong, the invincible Paragon saint said. However, such fortunate people only appear once every several trillion years. Moreover, even if one obtains a supreme medicine that allows them to instantly become a saint, the cultivation that they receive isn't a result of their own comprehension. They'll need billions upon trillions of years to understand and achieve mastery of these comprehensions. If they're less talented, perhaps they'll never be able to improve another inch for the rest of their lives. Ling Han smiled and said, I'm confident that I can become that fortunate person. In fact, one supreme medicine mightn't be enough. Although the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and Hellion Sun Shui were both relatively talented, there was only a sliver of hope that they could become saints. Moreover, he still had his parents as well as Lu Yutong and his other lovers. He couldn't just sit on his hands and watch them age and die, right? So be it if there was nothing that he could do. However, since there was a ray of hope, he had to fight to grab onto it no matter what. He had to obtain these supreme medicines to raise the strength of those around him. In fact, it was the Rain Emperor, Ding Ping, and the others who were incredibly talented cultivators. Moreover, they were resolute and determined in addition to being talented, and as long as they didn't die, it was extremely likely that they would become saints one day. The invincible Paragon saint almost spat blood. Such kinds of supreme medicines only appear once every several trillion years. Obtaining one will cost one several lifetimes of fortune, yet you actually want a few? I'll give you my admiration if you're genuinely able to obtain a supreme medicine. If you can obtain two, I'll change my surname to yours. Heh, no need to follow my surname. I already have a son. Ling Han chuckled as he rejected his offer. The invincible Paragon saint was rendered speechless. This person was truly shameless. P*SS off. P*SS off. Otherwise, I won't be able to resist the urge to kick you in the face, he said impatiently. Hold up for a moment. What's the next trial like? Can we two complete it together? Yes, it's only deciphering a sword strike anyway. You'll receive a reward as long as you can decipher it within a set time. The invincible sword saint appeared especially irritated, and he continued, I know that you care about rewards the most, so there's no need to ask anymore. There was a look of disdain on Ling Han's face, and he said, It's going to be another purple pattern mountain river pill anyway. It'll probably elevate one's power by 3 stars at most. SSH*TY brat. The invincible Paragon saint was so ticked off that his face was almost twisted out of shape. Ling Han chuckled and said, I really do wish that Senior can reward me with something else. The invincible Paragon saint gritted his teeth if he still had teeth and spat, Fuck off. How boring. I haven't even passed the 3rd trial yet I already know that the reward is merely another purple pattern mountain river pill. Sigh. Ling Han grumbled in his mind as he held hands with Shui Yinyu and climbed the stairs to the 3rd level. There were numerous people standing here. There were those at the mountain river tier, those at the sun moon tier, and even those at the heavenly body tier. Ling Han was slightly astonished by this sight. Shouldn't the first trial have eliminated most of the people? How were there still so many people here? Up ahead, a person that was formed from light was currently performing the same sword strike over and over again. However, this sword strike appeared to adhere to some true meaning of the great Tao. Each strike was tremendously mighty and seemed able to suppress heaven and earth. We have to decipher this sword strike? Ling Han watched the sword strike carefully. This strike wasn't especially complex, and its might came from its resonance with the great Tao. It drew on the regulations of heaven and earth appearing extremely mysterious every time it was performed. We're timed starting from when we enter, right? It's just that we're all timed differently depending on when we entered. This realization made Ling Han feel even more strange. Is this really a tomb? Chapter 11:20, Learning from the Sword Strike. Chapter 11:20, Learning from the Sword Strike. Ling Han felt that if he were to die one day, he definitely wouldn't set up so many trials and whatnot in his tomb. He felt that it would make much more sense if the trials here were being used to select disciples for the Majestic Heaven Sect. However, they weren't, and they were instead trials left by a dead person. This invincible Paragon Saint isn't thinking of recruiting a disciple, is he? This was extremely likely. Otherwise, what was the point of setting up so many trials? However, why couldn't he say it straight up? There was almost no doubt that he was a Genesis tier saint. Even if he wasn't, he was still at least an Eternal River tier elite. One had to realize that the Majestic Heaven Sect only had a single Eternal River tier elite as well. However, even if it were only the Majestic Heaven Sect that was recruiting disciples, and not he himself, all the young King tier prodigies in the neighboring galaxies were still especially eager. Meanwhile, the situation here suggested that a Genesis tier saint was going to find a disciple after his death. People would definitely fight tooth and nail for this opportunity. Hang on. Ling Han shook his head in his mind. If the invincible Paragon Saint made his intentions clear, it was likely that the heavenly body tier elites here would go around killing everyone else. If almost everyone else was dead, wouldn't their chances of success increase significantly? If a Genesis tier saint wanted to take a disciple, they naturally wouldn't favor those at the heavenly body tier over others. Instead, they would care more about one's potential. In other words, they would try to find someone who was most suited to following their path. Talent couldn't represent everything. Different people would be suited to different paths. Anyhow, the sword strike was especially simple, and everyone replicated its movements as they attempted to decipher a method to overcome it. The sword strike didn't possess any origin power when unleashed by the light person, and thus one naturally couldn't defeat this strike through brute strength. Instead, they had to defeat this strike using another strike. When one felt that they could defeat the strike, they could head over to exchange strikes with the light person. Whether or not they succeeded was naturally determined in a matter of seconds. In addition, a layer of primal chaos would envelop both the light person and the person that was attempting to decipher and overcome the sword strike. As a result, the others wouldn't be able to see their exchange. If the person passed, they would be able to leave. If not, they would return to their original spot. Because of this, the others couldn't derive any help or copy patterns based on the process of the light person's exchanges. Ling Han swept his gaze over the surroundings. There were truly a lot of heavenly body tier elites. However, he didn't see Empress Luan Xing. Perhaps she hadn't come yet. Or perhaps she had already deciphered this sword strike long ago and ascended to the 4th level. It was a shame that there were so many watchful eyes. Otherwise, he could have entered the Black Tower with Shui Yinyu and completed comprehension under the reincarnation tree. One day was equivalent to 1 year, and he was confident that no one could possibly be faster than them. Ling Han sighed in his mind. Even if he broke the time record and passed this trial with flying colors, his reward would still be a single purple pattern Mountain River pill. It was useful, but not that useful. Forget about it. I'll just decipher it here. Ling Han focused his attention back on the sword strike. This strike drew on some regulations of heaven and earth, making it appear remarkably profound. He couldn't learn this sword strike. This wasn't because his comprehension ability was weak, but rather because this sword strike drew on regulations that far exceeded the Mountain River tier. Although he couldn't learn it, this didn't mean that he couldn't decipher it. Otherwise, the invincible Paragon Saint would have been giving them an impossible task. However, this required time. Ling Han mulled over the sword strike in his mind, and he couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. This strike was truly incredible. It suppressed its opponent using the power of the great Tao. This was amazingly mysterious. He couldn't learn this strike, but he could learn from its principles. Sword of the Great Tao. Enlightenment arose in his mind. If he combined the sword of the Great Tao with his fast technique, how powerful would the might of the resulting sword technique be? The fast technique destroyed the regulations, while the sword of the Great Tao adhered to the regulations. It would be a pioneering feat if these two techniques could be combined. This would be his own path. Ling Han nodded in his mind. He had always wanted to create a technique that belonged to himself. However, achieving this was an extremely difficult task. Yet, right now, he finally saw a path before him. This allowed his comprehension to become clearer and more distinct. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Ling Han ruminated over the sword strike in his mind. Right now, he wasn't thinking about how to decipher it anymore. Rather, he was exploring the workings of this strike. The more he understood it, the more enlightenment arose in his mind. This caused him to be beside himself with delight. He lost all track of time. Some people successfully defeated the sword strike and left, while many others arrived and joined in on the deciphering. Many more people remained exactly where they were. After heaven knew how long, Ling Han finally came to his senses after being tapped on the arm by Shui Yinyu. This seductive beauty was somewhat confident that she had deciphered the sword strike, and she was ready to head over to test herself against the light person. Meanwhile, Shui Yinyu found it strange that Ling Han still hadn't gone over to challenge the light person yet. This was extremely abnormal, and she was puzzled by it. Only now did Ling Han realize that Xiao Sisi, Duan, and the others had already left long ago. He was lagging far behind them. "You go first," he said with a smile. "I've reaped bigger rewards." Shui Yinyu's eyes lit up, and she said, "You're learning the sword technique?" His wife was understanding him better and better. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Yes, but also no. I'm figuring out the sword strike, but I'm not actually learning it. I'm simply learning from its principles." Shui Yinyu nodded in understanding. Just as she had thought, Ling Han's comprehension ability was definitely no weaker than the other young king-tier prodigies. "Then I'll head over first," she said. "Sure," Ling Han said with a nod. Shui Yinyu went over to challenge the light person. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to succeed. She wasn't dispirited. She said, "I'm confident that I can decipher this strike in 3 more days." Ling Han nodded and continued to mull over the sword intent contained within the strike. He definitely couldn't receive the reward for this trial, yet he didn't care at all. This opportunity to explore the great Tao of heaven and earth was far too precious and rare, and its value was countless times greater than that of the trial reward. He lost track of time once again, and the people around him came and went. At some point in time, he finally stood up. There was already nothing more that he could learn. After all, this was only a single strike. He could learn the rhythm of Tao, but he couldn't directly learn the regulations of Tao. In any case, he couldn't grasp such kinds of regulations anyway. They far exceeded his current cultivation level. A confident smile spread across Ling Han's face. He had already planted a seed in his mind, and there would eventually come a day when this seed sprouted and grew into a towering tree. When that time came, he would have forged a cultivation path that belonged to himself. He went over to challenge the light person. The light person wasn't a genuine being. As such, it was completely emotionless. It immediately unleashed the sword strike at Ling Han. Ling Han drew his divine demon sword and replied with a strike of his own. The tip of the light person's sword came to a stop before Ling Han's neck, and Ling Han's divine demon sword also came to a stop before the light person's neck. After a brief pause, Ling Han suddenly felt his surroundings spin. He appeared in a completely new place. He had passed the trial. Ling Han clearly hadn't thought about how to defeat the sword strike, yet strangely, the method to decipher and defeat it naturally came to his mind after he grasped the rhythm of Tao that was contained within it. "Ha ha ha ha, brat, you can't ask me for a reward this time." There was yet another stone tablet here, and it was from this stone tablet that the invincible Paragon Saint's voice traveled out. Right now, his voice was full of delight. Ling Han had dissed him many times over the rewards for passing the trials. However, he had finally lost the right to a reward this time, and this made the invincible Paragon Saint feel an evil sense of pleasure. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, Yeah, I truly yearn for those alchemical pills, that's right. Don't tell me that the rewards for passing the 4th and 5th trials are also those pills? Congratulations, you're absolutely correct. The Invincible Paragon Saint smiled and said, the best purple pattern mountain river pills can reach a quality of 10 stars. In other words, they can elevate one's power by a maximum of 10 stars. Ling Han found this to be strange, and he asked, if my power can already surpass 5 stars, won't I obtain a power of 15 stars after ingesting a 10-star quality purple pattern mountain river pill? Chapter 11:21. Hit me. Chapter 11:21. Hit me. Impossible. The Invincible Paragon Saint denied so hard one could picture him shaking his head, and said, 10 stars is an absolute threshold. There's no way to surpass it. If you already possess a power of 10 stars, then ingesting the purple pattern mountain river pills will be completely useless. Oh, Ling Han said with a nod. He was genuinely disinterested in this kind of alchemical pill. This was because he held a firm belief that he could definitely reach the true pinnacle of the mountain river tier. I can reach a state of perfection myself, so what's the point of relying on external items? It's best to avoid relying on external items whenever possible. The true power of cultivators should belong to their own bodies. Ling Han chuckled and said, so, you're going to keep rewarding us with purple pattern mountain river pills? Can't you swap these out for something else? No, unless you can pass the 9th level of the tower, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. Ling Han's eyes lit up and he asked, what reward will I receive? The Invincible Paragon Saint scoffed and said, and you're saying that you're not greedy. You've revealed your true nature now, huh? Can I ask out of curiosity? Ling Han said with a smile. Pfft. Do you believe that excuse yourself? There was a look of disdain on the Invincible Paragon Saint's face. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, you're a senior, so is it really good for you to make fun of me like that? Everyone has a responsibility to lambast shameless people, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. Ling Han rolled his eyes. This Invincible Paragon Saint needed to change his name to Invincible D*Kekhead Saint. He was actually exchanging slurs with a junior like him. What's the 4th trial like? He asked. The 4th to 9th trials are all the same. They're extremely easy and simply test how powerful your attacks are, as well as how sturdy your defenses are. As for the final reward, that's naturally a secret that will be revealed at the very end. Anyhow, what's the point of telling you now? Can you become the fortunate fellow who lasts until the end? The Invincible Paragon Saint said. How boring, Ling Han said with a shake his head. He had genuinely wished that there would be a few more sword strikes for him to decipher and learn from. That would have allowed him to walk further along his own cultivation path. Pass through all 9 trials first, then tell me whether you're bored or not. The Invincible Paragon Saint humphed and said, piss off, piss off. Is there a halo of pesky irritation above your head? Why do I feel annoyed and angry just looking at you? It's you that's unreliable, okay? Ling Han grumbled in his mind. He didn't speak any more nonsense and climbed the stairs to the 4th level. This level was spacious and empty, with only 2 stone statues standing in the middle of the room. There was also an hourglass, and it had just started to measure the time. One of the stone statues had "Hit me" written across its chest, while the other stone statue had "I'll hit you" written across its chest. That D*Kekhead Saint is indeed unreliable. Ling Han walked up to the stone statue that had "Hit me" written across its chest first. He then clenched his fist and swung it toward it. Pong! The stone statue was instantly sent flying. He wanted to follow up with another strike to obliterate the stone statue once and for all. Yet the words on the stone statue's chest suddenly changed to pass. That's all? Ling Han was astonished. He wasn't interested in being hit by the other stone statue, so he confidently strode out of the room. You finished that quickly? There was a hint of annoyance in the Invincible Paragon Saint's voice, and he said, Here, take it and P***s off. Righto, I've become this disliked. Ling Han didn't stop and continued on to the 5th level. As with the fourth level, there were also two stone statues in this room, one which had "Hit me" written across its chest, and one which had "I'll hit you" written across its chest. Ling Han still didn't want to be hit. Thus, he naturally chose to hit the first stone statue. He threw a fist, and the stone statue fell over. However, he realized that this stone statue was clearly stronger than the one on the fourth level. This was because it had merely fallen down and not been sent flying. Anyhow, he had still passed this fifth trial. It was evident that these stone statues would become stronger the higher up the tower he climbed. Although he hadn't challenged the "I'll hit you" stone statue yet, he believed that the offensive ability of these stone statues would also rise with each increasing level. As expected, this tomb is selecting a disciple, isn't it? Ling Han didn't mind receiving the inheritance of a Genesis tier saint. Such beings were the strongest in the immortal realm, and even Venerable Trinity would go crazy with excitement if he arrived in this place. However, the Invincible Paragon saint didn't like him much anymore. So would he deal him a blow from behind after he emerged victorious from the crowd? It was very likely that this unreliable D*Kekhead saint could do such things. Forget about it. I have to pass this tower no matter what, so I may as well deal with whatever comes my way. Ling Han collected his prize and climbed the stairs to the sixth level. Pong! He chose the "Hit me" stone statue once again. Yet the stone statue remained unmoving even after he struck it. Ling Han was astonished. His power could surpass almost 6 stars now, and the difficulty of the trials in this place was definitely adjusted according to one's cultivation level. There was no way the trials would have a mountain river tier cultivator attack a heavenly body tier stone statue. Similarly, it wouldn't have a heavenly body tier elite attack a mountain river tier stone statue. Otherwise, these trials would be completely pointless. Yet, even a power that surpassed 6 stars wasn't enough. Ling Han activated his secret techniques as well as his divine patterns of flame. He then launched another strike at the "Hit me" stone statue. However, his flames could only scorch the stone statue black and increase the amount of damage done. It couldn't increase the power of his physical strike. He tried to swallow a purple pattern mountain river pill, yet he discovered that his spatial spirit tool had been sealed. He had stored the purple pattern mountain river pills into his spatial spirit tool in order to prevent the Invincible Paragon saint from discovering the secret of his black tower. That being the case, he could only rely on his own power to pass this trial. Ling Han unleashed his fast technique, yet the might of the fast technique was largely realized in its ability to be fast. It couldn't generate a power that exceeded his limit. It was ineffective. Ling Han took a few steps back and then unleashed his annihilating dragon star arrow. Shio, shio, shio. He used his origin power as arrows and fired several shots toward the stone statue. However, this was still to no avail, and the stone statue still stood in the exact same spot. He was truly astonished this time. His power could surpass 6 stars, and he had even activated a secret technique on top of that. Yet, he was still unable to pass this trial. 1/3 of the sand had already trickled to the bottom half of the hourglass. Will I have failed when all of the sand trickles down? He hadn't seen any others at the staircase leading to the 6th level, and this signified that one would be directly sent back to the 1st level if they failed to pass this trial. Then I'll use the ultimate arrow. This arrow would unleash all of the power in his body in an instant. Not only was it incredibly quick, but it was also devastatingly powerful. If even this failed, then Ling Han's only option would be to get hit. Ling Han took a deep breath and then started to activate the ultimate arrow. His origin power gathered rapidly under the effects of this secret technique. He would be able to unleash his full power at any moment. Shio. The origin power arrow transformed into a streak of light as it shot out. It struck the "Hit me" stone statue and immediately sent it flying. He had passed. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. However, he instantly plopped down onto the ground. He was out of energy. Only after a while did he recover some of his stamina. He stood up and walked out, and he saw another stone tablet appear in his blurry and shaky vision. Brat, Your abilities are a little beyond my expectations. Your power hasn't reached 6 stars yet you were still able to pass the 6th trial. The Invincible Paragon Saint didn't hide the surprise and praise in his voice. It was just so-so. Ling Han spoke modestly, yet his expression was one of smugness. He was doing this on purpose. There was no need to show too much respect to unreliable seniors like this Invincible Paragon Saint. Rather, acting as he did now was more to this senior's liking. Although the Invincible Paragon Saint always roared at Ling Han to *SS off, the only person that he actively spoke to was also Ling Han as well. This spoke volumes about what he liked. Hee, I've got my eyes on you now. I'm sure that you won't be able to pass the 7th trial. Sure enough, this *Kekhead Saint couldn't help but exchange slurs with Ling Han now. Chapter 11:21. Hit me. Chapter 11:21. Hit me. Impossible. The Invincible Paragon Saint denied so hard one could picture him shaking his head, and said, 10 stars is an absolute threshold. There's no way to surpass it. If you already possess a power of 10 stars, then ingesting the purple pattern mountain river pills will be completely useless. Oh, Ling Han said with a nod. He was genuinely disinterested in this kind of alchemical pill. This was because he held a firm belief that he could definitely reach the true pinnacle of the mountain river tier. I can reach a state of perfection myself, so what's the point of relying on external items? It's best to avoid relying on external items whenever possible. The true power of cultivators should belong to their own bodies. Ling Han chuckled and said, So, you're going to keep rewarding us with purple pattern mountain river pills? Can't you swap these out for something else? No, unless you can pass the 9th level of the tower, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. Ling Han's eyes lit up and he asked, What reward will I receive? The Invincible Paragon Saint scoffed and said, And you're saying that you're not greedy. You've revealed your true nature now, huh? Can I ask out of curiosity? Ling Han said with a smile. Pfft. Do you believe that excuse yourself? There was a look of disdain on the Invincible Paragon Saint's face. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, You're a senior, so is it really good for you to make fun of me like that? Everyone has a responsibility to lambaste shameless people, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. Ling Han rolled his eyes. This Invincible Paragon Saint needed to change his name to Invincible *Kekhead Saint. He was actually exchanging slurs with a junior like him. What's the 4th trial like? He asked. The 4th to 9th trials are all the same. They're extremely easy and simply test how powerful your attacks are, as well as how sturdy your defenses are. As for the final reward, that's naturally a secret that will be revealed at the very end. Anyhow, what's the point of telling you now? Can you become the fortunate fellow who lasts until the end? The Invincible Paragon Saint said. How boring, Ling Han said with a shake his head. He had genuinely wished that there would be a few more sword strikes for him to decipher and learn from. That would have allowed him to walk further along his own cultivation path. Pass through all 9 trials first, then tell me whether you're bored or not. The Invincible Paragon Saint humphed and said, Piss off, piss off. Is there a halo of pesky irritation above your head? Why do I feel annoyed and angry just looking at you? It's you that's unreliable, okay? Ling Han grumbled in his mind. He didn't speak any more nonsense and climbed the stairs to the 4th level. This level was spacious and empty, with only 2 stone statues standing in the middle of the room. There was also an hourglass, and it had just started to measure the time. One of the stone statues had "Hit me" written across its chest, while the other stone statue had "I'll hit you" written across its chest. That *Kekhead Saint is indeed unreliable. Ling Han walked up to the stone statue that had "Hit me" written across its chest first. He then clenched his fist and swung it toward it. Pong! The stone statue was instantly sent flying. He wanted to follow up with another strike to obliterate the stone statue once and for all. Yet the words on the stone statue's chest suddenly changed to "pass." That's all? Ling Han was astonished. He wasn't interested in being hit by the other stone statue, so he confidently strode out of the room. You finished that quickly? There was a hint of annoyance in the Invincible Paragon Saint's voice, and he said, here, 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 take it and P***s off. Righto, I've become this disliked. Ling Han didn't stop and continued on to the 5th level. As with the 4th level, there were also 2 stone statues in this room, one which had "Hit me" written across its chest, and one which had "I'll hit you" written across its chest. Ling Han still didn't want to be hit. Thus, he naturally chose to hit the first stone statue. He threw a fist, and the stone statue fell over. In terms of offensive ability, his power hadn't even reached 6 stars yet. As such, even the explosive power of his ultimate arrow was somewhat limited. In other words, it was impossible for him to raise his power anymore. When it came to defensive ability, however, how many stars could he surpass? Hee, come at me. The "I'll hit you" stone statue instantly came to life when he walked before it. Then, it struck its fist toward him. Pong! Ling Han was instantly sent flying. However, before he had even landed, the stone statue had already caught up again and launched another strike. So fast, so powerful. Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. There was no special divine pattern on the stone statue's body. It was just that its power was extraordinarily great. Ling Han couldn't block its fists. However, what did that matter? His defenses had already reached the toughness of level 4 godly metal. If one wanted to wound him with raw power, they would need to possess power that was at least at the Sun-Moon tier. In any case, all Ling Han could do was try his best to ward off the stone statue's relentless and powerful attacks. There was absolutely no opportunity for him to counterattack. He tried his best to protect his face. Since he couldn't escape the fate of being beaten, of course it was necessary for him to guard his handsome face. When choosing the "Hit Me" statues, one strike was all it took to pass the trial and thus level. However, the "I'll hit you" statues were completely different. Pong, pong, pong. A barrage of relentless attacks continued to rain down on Ling Han, and it appeared as if the stone statue would only stop when it had beaten him to death. Only when the hourglass stopped flowing did the stone statue retreat to the side. The "I'll hit you" on its chest changed into "pass." Ling Han groaned and thought to himself, "Can't you beat me a little less?" He walked out, and the stone tablet reappeared among the changed surroundings. However, another person had also arrived in this place. It was Empress Luanxing. This was astounding. Empress Luanxing had also managed to make it here. However, had she passed by striking the stone statue, or had she passed by being beaten by the stone statue? Ling Han felt that the former was more possible. After all, the indestructible heaven scroll was far too unique. However, if it were the former, then this Empress power was unexpectedly strong. If this were the case, shouldn't she have been powerful enough to defeat the J-Drop and Eternity Sky Majestic empires? Why didn't she unite the joint peace planet? Of course, it was also possible that those 2 majestic empires had been imperial empires before. If that were the case, they would have extremely powerful trump cards, for example, supreme killing formations that couldn't be moved. As such, they would have tremendously powerful defenses even if their offensive abilities were lacking. There was definitely a reason behind the 3 majestic empires being able to coexist peacefully for millions of years. Empress Luanxing also saw Ling Han. A look of astonishment appeared on her face that was hidden by the aura of primal chaos that shrouded her. She hadn't expected anyone else to also make it through the first 8 levels of the tower. She even more so didn't expect that person to be Ling Han. Killing intent flashed past her beautiful eyes. She, who had never been touched by a man before, had actually sucked this person's blood, and she had sucked it from his neck, no less. Moreover, her breasts had also been groped by this bastard. These memories caused her killing intent to seethe and boil. Even that wisp of will in her mind couldn't prevent her from steeling her resolve to kill this person. She immediately struck a palm toward Ling Han. This was an attack from a heavenly body tier elite, and even heaven and earth lost their luster. "Stop, stop, stop," the stone tablet shouted. The overwhelming attack instantly vanished into thin air. Although I also detest that brat, anyone who enters this tower is a seed. Before I give up on them, none of them can die. Ling Han's heart thumped against his chest. There was the invincible Paragon Saint to protect him now, but what would he do after they left this tower? He cultivated in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the Great Ling Empire was also a vassal state of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire. He could run, but he couldn't hide. Sigh, why did you suddenly run over to suck blood? It's not like you're a bat or anything. Empress Luanxing didn't attack anymore, instead simply glaring at Ling Han. She knew that it would be impossible to kill Ling Han here. Thus, being the decisive person that she was, she naturally wouldn't waste any more time or strength on him. However, she was infuriated by the fact that she could only glare at the pervert who had molested her, even though he was standing right before her eyes. She was an empress, a ruler of a majestic empire, yet she actually couldn't deal with a lowly subordinate. It's the last trial already, so hurry up and begin. I can barely wait any longer, the invincible Paragon Saint said. Hurry, hurry, hurry. If you can pass, I'll give you a massive surprise. Empress Luanxing didn't hesitate and immediately climbed the stairs to the 9th level. It was clear that her goal was to leave this tower as soon as possible and then kill Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. By the looks of it, he would have no choice but to use the Black Tower. Chapter 11:23, Final Trial. Chapter 11:23, Final Trial. The 9th level was the last level, and as with the previous several levels, there were 2 stone statues standing in the middle of the room. They were the 2 brothers, Hit Me and I'll Hit You. Sure enough, Empress Luanxing chose the Hit Me stone statue. Meanwhile, Ling Han chose the I'll Hit You stone statue. This caused a sense of grief to well up in his heart. However, whom could he blame for not having 5 mountains and rivers yet? Whom could he blame for not reaching the pinnacle of the mountain river tier yet? Anyhow, the fact that Empress Luanxing was actually able to pass the 8th trial through her offensive power was extremely astounding. Ling Han involuntarily looked over. He wanted to witness the might of this empress with his own 2 eyes. Wang. 4 heavenly bodies materialized behind Empress Luanxing's back, each of them exuding a profound and ancient aura. Excellent, excellent. You've reached a state of perfection for both the Sun-Moon tier and Mountain River tier. Although you've yet to form your 5th heavenly body, your strength has already reached 9 stars. The invincible Paragon Saint couldn't help but praise Empress Luanxing. Ling Han was stunned. The Empress is actually this freakishly talented. People often said that 5-star geniuses only existed in the legends. However, the power of this Empress had already surpassed 9 stars. As a result, her battle prowess also surpassed at least 9 stars. In fact, it was even possible that it surpassed more than 9 stars. If one wanted to battle against someone who was 1 major tier above them, however, they would need a power of 10 stars, not a battle prowess of 10 stars. Thus, she was still no match for elites at the Eternal River tier, at least not now. There was still hope, though, as she could form another heavenly body and reach a state of perfection in the heavenly body tier. It's very strange, however, the invincible Paragon Saint continued. Although I can sense the fact that you should have 5 mountains and rivers, as well as 5 suns and moons, your power isn't as powerful as I imagined. I was the one who constructed this tower and the trials within it, and it should be easy to pass as long as one has a power that can surpass 8 stars. Your power can clearly surpass 9 stars, yet you struggled to even pass the 8th trial. I wonder why that is. The invincible Paragon Saint appeared to be extremely curious. The fact that even a saint like him was curious showed just how astonishing a secret Empress Luanxing hid within her body. However, this was all understandable. Empress Luanxing had suddenly risen to power 1 million years ago, establishing the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire and conquering 1/3 of the land on the Joint Peace Planet. However, before she became one of the 3 rulers of the Joint Peace Planet, it was as if she had suddenly appeared from out of nowhere. No one knew where she had come from. There was definitely a huge secret hiding behind her meteoric rise. Empress Luanxing didn't answer the Invincible Paragon Saint's curiosity. She didn't restrain her domineering aura, either, even though she stood in the presence of a being who had once been a saint. She simply channeled the power of her heavenly bodies and pressed her hand toward the stone statue. A tangle of intertwining divine patterns appeared before her, yet at a rough glance, there were only 4,000 or so. Possessing 4,000 or so divine patterns could only be regarded as relatively powerful. However, it was still a long way off the pinnacle of the heavenly body tier, which was 9,999 divine patterns. Indeed, Empress Luanxing was still a long way off from reaching a power of 9 stars. Did the Invincible Paragon Saint observe wrong? Perhaps Empress Luanxing hasn't reached a power of 9 stars yet? However, how is that possible? Although he's a D*Kekhead saint, his observation skills shouldn't be this weak. Otherwise, he might as well find a block of tofu and smack himself to death. It was clear that Empress Luanxing was preparing a powerful attack. The aura of primal chaos around her swarmed, and the cloak that draped behind her billowed even though there was no wind. Her hair also fluttered, and she appeared both mighty and seductively beautiful. Casting one's gaze over the world, perhaps she was the only person who could combine these two starkly different dispositions so perfectly. Apocalyptic scenes flashed across the Empress' eyes. However, it was a pity that her face was hidden by the aura of primal chaos, preventing Ling from seeing this sight. However, the Invincible Paragon Saint could clearly see through the aura of primal chaos. He faltered for a moment before saying, "Huh? Why do I suddenly feel like I've seen that before? However, I can't seem to recall where I saw it." Ling was astonished. Elites wouldn't suffer from bad memory, as their divine sense was incredibly powerful. Thus, their memory was naturally amazing. However, the Invincible Paragon Saint actually said that he couldn't recall something? How long ago must that event have occurred? Was it a memory from when he was a child? Otherwise, once one started to cultivate, their memories definitely wouldn't go hazy. Boom! Empress Luanxing struck out with her jade-like palm, and it was as if the heavens were about to collapse. Even though they were in this closed-off space, it still seemed as if a black hole that desired to swallow everything had appeared above their heads. Her strike is far too powerful. Is this power that surpasses 8 stars? Pong! The hit-me stone statue fell, but wasn't sent flying. Haha! What overwhelming power! Excellent! Excellent! The Invincible Paragon Saint praised. He then turned to Ling and said, "Brat, it's your turn now." Ling felt extremely vexed. One person had struck a stone statue, while one person would be struck by a stone statue. Their experiences would be completely different. He sighed, and then walked before the "I'll hit you" statue. "Come at me. I've accepted the fact that I still haven't reached a state of perfection for my cultivation level yet." The stone statue immediately started to attack Ling. Pong, pong, pong. The offensive power of the stone statue was even stronger this time, and all Ling could do was protect his handsome face while being relentlessly and mercilessly beaten. A ball of fire welled up in his heart this time. After all, this was different from when he was on the 8th level. Right now, the Empress was also watching him from the sidelines. However, Empress Luanxing didn't look down on him. Could any ordinary person take a beating like this? However, this didn't quell her killing intent. The hourglass quickly trickled to a stop. The "I'll hit you" statue finally ceased beating Ling, and it retreated to the side and became unmoving as if it were just another ordinary stone statue. Where are our rewards? Hurry up and let us leave this place. Empress Luanxing urged. She naturally wasn't interested in the reward. Rather, she was itching to leave this place so she could kill Ling. Ling hurriedly smiled and said, "There's no hurry at all. Why don't we sit down for a cup of tea?" Ha 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 ha. The Invincible Paragon Saint roared with laughter and said, very well indeed. One possesses a most powerful offensive ability, and one possesses a most powerful defensive ability. You two are the ideal match. Ideal match? Ling Han murmured. Then, he raised his voice in protest and said, Oi, 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 don't say things that can cause misunderstandings. Hee hee. The Invincible Paragon Saint laughed heartily. Oi, what the hell do you mean? Ling Han asked. The Invincible Paragon Saint kept laughing for a while before saying, Next up is my reward for you too. He paused for a moment, seemingly eager to hear Ling Han and Empress Luanxing's curious questions. To his disappointment, however, neither of them responded to him. Fuck. The Invincible Paragon Saint had been snubbed, so he could only continue. I'm going to accept the child of you two as my disciple and raise them to become the most powerful person in the world. Pooh. Ling Han instantly spluttered loudly. Are you fucking retarded? However, the Invincible Paragon Saint appeared to be extremely excited, and he said, when the most powerful offensive ability and most powerful defensive ability combine, the child that they create will definitely possess both of these great abilities. As such, this child will be the most suitable candidate for becoming my disciple. Ling Han shook his head and said, Oi, 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 stop talking to yourself. There's no way that's going to happen. Meanwhile, a devastating killing intent surged from Empress Luanxing's body. The Invincible Paragon Saint actually wanted her to have children with Ling Han? Was he seeking death? Haha, if I want you two to have children, you two will have no choice but to have children. The Invincible Paragon Saint chortled in glee and continued, Otherwise, you two can just stay here and here forever. Whenever my disciple is born is when I'll let you two out. Fuck. Chapter 11:24. Give birth to my disciple. Chapter 11:24. Give birth to my disciple. How vulgar and shameless. Isn't he forcing people to prostitute themselves? How can he force us to make a child? Are you still a senior? Ling Han questioned. How can you ask for something so vulgar and shameless? Pay. There are 3 kinds of unfilial deeds, not having descendants being the most severe of them. I'm merely doing what's best for you two, the Invincible Paragon Saint said. He was indeed *Kekhead Saint. How could he still remain so righteous when uttering such words? Shameless people clearly wouldn't back down at a mere few words. Ling Han's mind whirred, and he said, Why do you insist on taking a newborn as your disciple? Just look at us two. One of us possesses the most powerful offensive ability, while one of us possesses the most powerful defensive ability. Why don't you teach your divine techniques to us? The Invincible Paragon Saint's voice suddenly became cold, and he said, Humph, can you two be trusted? What? Has this senior been betrayed before? And he doesn't trust anyone anymore? I'll tell you two something, and hopefully this causes you two to give up. You'll be the parents of my disciple, after all, so you have the right to know about these matters. The Invincible Paragon Saint paused for a moment before continuing. I was already a supreme elite countless years ago. However, I often cultivated in seclusion in order to charge toward an even higher cultivation level. I had 3 disciples at the time, yet, in order to break through to become saints, they actually plotted against me while I was cultivating in seclusion. Their actions caused me to suffer unhealable Dao wounds. As expected, this senior had been betrayed before, and it was because of this that he didn't trust people anymore. However, this was understandable. Disciples weren't like students, and it could be said that disciples were no different from one's own children. Being betrayed by people so close to him naturally gave him deep wounds. As a result, it was extremely difficult for him to trust others. Ling Han interjected, Why did they plot against you? Wouldn't it have been better to have the guidance of a saint? Humph, do you think the Genesis tier is that easy to reach? The Invincible Paragon Saint chuckled coldly and said, Even though my 3 disciples were prodigies among prodigies, their chances of reaching the Genesis tier were still less than 1 in 100. Taking that final step isn't something any ordinary prodigy can achieve. One also needs to come across enough rare opportunities and have enough godly medicines to support their cultivation. Otherwise, one will only end up destroying themselves if they try to break through blindly. They wanted to steal the fruits of my cultivation. Although this couldn't let them reach the Genesis tier immediately, It raised their chances of success by at least 30%. This was a choice between a chance of less than 1% and a chance of more than 30%. The appeal of becoming a saint was tremendous, and there were naturally those who would become reckless and take massive risks. In fact, there were even those who would kill their own master. "My condolences," Ling Han said in comfort. A puzzled expression then appeared on his face, and he asked, "Since you've already been betrayed by your disciples once, why are you still looking to take another disciple?" "Humph. It's because of this that I need to teach my disciple from when they're a blank piece of paper," the Invincible Paragon Saint said. "Fine. This senior has become obsessed with finding a newborn disciple. I can't be bothered talking to you anymore. Let us out of here." Ling Han shouted. "No problem. I'll let you two leave once you give birth to my disciple," the Invincible Paragon Saint said. "Just think about it. One day, the child of you two will become a supreme elite who can sweep through the galaxies and universe. How glorious is that?" Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "There's no need to get to so much trouble. Someday, I myself will be able to sweep through the entire world. I don't need to rely on my children." *TTY brat, you're really brimming with confidence, aren't you?" the Invincible Paragon Saint grumbled. "You're actually claiming that you can sweep through the entire world." Ling Han smiled and said, "Aren't you the one calling yourself the Invincible Paragon Saint?" The Invincible Paragon Saint was rendered speechless. Although his current title was a bit over the top, at least he had been a saint before. But what about Ling Han? "My true identity is the Notionless Saint," he said. He revealed his true identity to prevent Ling Han from using his nickname to attack him. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, "Senior, it's already been so long, so perhaps your 3 disciples have already passed away." "Impossible," the Notionless Saint immediately said. "Although I was able to escape with my crippled body, my saintly origin was snatched by my 3 traitorous disciples. With their talents, it's extremely likely that they've all become saints. I've been cultivating my divine sense all these years, and I've even ground away my saintly might such that my disciple will be able to inherit it. This is also why I haven't returned to the outside world for so long. Based on my estimations, only a few 100 million years have passed, so those 3 traitorous disciples of mine are definitely still alive. Moreover, their cultivation has most likely reached a profound level as well." Ling Han felt that this saint had lived through a lot of grief. He had been screwed over by his disciples in life, yet after he died, he still chose to grind away his own divine sense in order to benefit his future disciple. Was there really a need for him to do this? "Senior, can't you live a second life?" he asked. "How can I live a second life without obtaining a reincarnation flower?" the Notionless Saint said. "However, only one reincarnation flower will exist in the entire immortal realm at any one time. Moreover, each flower needs tens of billions of years to bloom. As invincible as Saint Kings are, even they can only sigh in disappointment before a half-bloomed reincarnation flower if they're born during the wrong time. Anyhow, enough with the nonsense. Hurry up and make a disciple for me. Rest assured, I won't peek." "Oi! Oi!" Ling Han shouted. However, the stone tablet didn't make another sound. Empress Luanxing had been silently listening from the side this entire time. However, she turned her gaze onto Ling Han now, killing intent burning in her eyes. "You want to create children with me? Go die." The Empress launched a ferocious attack toward Ling Han. However, she suddenly discovered that her cultivation level had been suppressed to the shattering void tier just as her attack flew out. How could such a measly attack kill Ling Han? "Hee hee, brat, I've already suppressed the cultivation level of this thorny rose. What are you waiting for?" The Notionless Saint's voice traveled into their ears again. "Oh, old delinquent." Ling Han was absolutely stupefied. What kind of saint was this? He had no bottom line at all. He turned to face Empress Luanxing, and his mouth involuntarily gaped open. Empress Luanxing's cultivation level had been suppressed, and as a result, the aura of primal chaos that enveloped her also started to disappear rapidly. Her true appearance was gradually revealed. Beautiful, alluring, pure, enchanting, seductive. Ling Han couldn't find any single adjective to describe Empress Luanxing. This was because there was a mix of purity and seductiveness, aloofness and allure, and other strikingly contrasting dispositions on her breathtakingly beautiful face. These qualities shouldn't have appeared on the face of a single person, and yet they did. However, these features didn't make Empress Luanxing appear odd in the least. Rather, they filled her with a bewitching aura that was as fiery as fire, yet as frosty as ice. Different notions of beauty were all gathered in her one body, and even the hearts of ascetic monks would flutter if they laid their eyes upon her. Her charisma had already transcended the state of mere beauty. In terms of beauty alone, the imperial empress of the Rock Palace had been no less beautiful than her. In fact, her disposition had even been slightly nobler. However, in terms of one's allure to males, there was no one else in the world who could match this empress. At least until now, Ling Han still had yet to see another woman who was as striking and as feminine as this empress. No wonder the Eternity Sky Emperor and J-Drop Emperor were willing to give up their majestic empires for her hand in marriage. She was indeed a beauty who was worth giving up one's nation for. Elites as powerful as the Eternity Sky and J-Drop Emperor could definitely see through the aura of primal chaos that shrouded Empress Luanxing. As such, they had naturally seen her true appearance before. In fact, those at the heavenly body tier could probably all see her true appearance. According to rumors, the left minister and the other officials all didn't dare to look at Empress Luanxing when attending the court. By the looks of it, they were afraid of committing stupid acts if they looked at the empress too much. However, the cultivation level of this breathtaking seductive beauty had actually been suppressed now. As long as Ling Han wished, he could force himself onto this empress. This kind of temptation, what man could hold himself back? Chapter 11:25, Resisting. Chapter 11:25, Resisting. Empress Luanxing clearly knew this as well. She remained silent, yet a primitive and ancient aura radiated from her body. It was as if she were going to shatter the notionless saint's seal and recover her powerful cultivation. Several shadows of large snakes appeared behind her back, each of them larger than a mountain. No, they were even larger than heavenly bodies. It was as if they could open their jaws and swallow entire stars. 9 Snake. You're actually from the 9 Snake tribe. The notionless saint suddenly shouted. There was surprise and excitement in his voice. Haha, no wonder your aura felt so familiar. You're actually from the fabled 9 Snake tribe. Having this kind of bloodline, and with my teachings, my disciple will definitely become the #1 elite in the world. 9 Snake tribe? Ling Han felt extremely vexed. Judging by the notionless saint's excitement, this 9 Snake tribe was probably extremely powerful. However, he had never heard of this tribe before. Empress Luanxing was unmoved by his words. She simply continued to attack the restrictions on her body. Don't waste your strength, young lady. Although you possess the bloodline of the 9 Snake tribe, you're still only at the heavenly body tier. However, I'm already at the Genesis tier. Those at the Genesis tier are saints, and the gulf between you and me is simply too large to overcome. I can suppress the sky with a single thought, so how can you dream of ever undoing my restrictions? Empress Luanxing wasn't willing to give up. She was a ruler, after all, so how could she go down without putting up a fight? The notionless saint purposefully provoked Ling Han, saying, Brat, what are standing there in a daze for? Hurry up and do her. You're not attracted even though she's such a beautiful woman? Are you a eunuch? Ling Han chuckled and said, Why is the eunuch worrying when the emperor is not one? Fuck. The notionless saint was slightly ticked off. He was a mighty saint, and if it weren't for the fact that he only had a wisp of his soul left, and if it weren't for the fact that he needed Ling Han to copulate with Empress Luanxing, would he really swallow such abuse? Ling Han looked at Empress Luanxing and said, Don't worry. Although I don't dare to say that I only love one woman, I'm not someone who'll get into a relationship with any woman that I come across. Empress Luanxing felt slightly embarrassed and irritated. She had always enjoyed a much higher position than others, So when had she ever needed others to show sympathy or be charitable toward her? If her cultivation level hadn't been suppressed, she would have been able to slice Ling Han into pieces with a casual strike. However, there was nothing she could do about the current situation. She couldn't free herself from the notionless saint's restrictions, so she was truly at the mercy of Ling Han. If Ling Han forced himself onto her, all she could do was attempt to drag him down with her. Brat, you talk quite tough. However, how long can you last? Anyhow, I'm not in a hurry. I can simply spend tens or even hundreds of years waiting for you too, the notionless saint said. He stopped speaking after this, and it was as if he were truly going to ignore Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time trickled by, and the only people in the 9th level were Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing, a lone man and a lone woman. Ling Han had never thought that he was a good example of a moral person. However, as a man, there were things that he would do, and things that he wouldn't do. No matter how attractive Empress Luan Xing was, he definitely wouldn't force himself onto a weak woman. This was a question of principles, and there was a bottom line that he would never traverse. He simply cultivated every day. There was a demonic power source in his body, and the life essence in this tomb was also extremely rich. Thus, the speed of his cultivation was definitely not slow. It was a shame that he couldn't enter the Black Tower. Otherwise, the speed of his improvement would be even quicker if he were able to comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree. Even so, he was still able to stride ahead in leaps and bounds. The speed of his cultivation would definitely shock others. 10 days, 20 days, 1 month. Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing both kept to themselves. Although they were in the same room, they pretty much hadn't spoken a single word to each other. Oh, my proud Empress! Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. How much self-control did he need not to lay his hands on her? *TTY Senior. *TTY Senior. Ling Han shouted. *TTY Brat. What did you call me? The notionless saint said in an angry voice. You're acting improperly even though you're an old man. So, you're naturally a *TTY Senior. Ling Han smiled and continued, say, *TTY Senior. Where are the others? Concentrate on being a good bridegroom, the notionless saint said with a humph. Why do you care about the others anyway? It was clear that he was extremely displeased. If it weren't for the fact that he only had a wisp of his soul remaining, perhaps even he would be attracted to the 9-snake woman. It looks like I won't be able to leave anytime soon. Help me tell my friends that they can leave first and not worry about me, Ling Han said. Why do I have to act as your messenger? The notionless saint said in displeasure. He had been a saint before, yet he actually had to deliver a message for a junior now? This was way beneath him. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, You're the one who needs my help right now. Isn't it only natural that you also help me do some trivial things? Anyhow, this is a matter between you and me, so why drag other unrelated people into the matter? *TTY Brat, the notionless saint mumbled. Fine, I'll pass your message to that woman. TSK, TSK, TSK. Who would have thought? You're actually quite the loyal husband. Ling Han didn't think that he was very loyal. He hadn't forced himself onto Empress Luan Xing, because he simply would never force himself onto others. Moreover, what would he do in the future if he actually did force himself onto her? Was Empress Luan Xing the kind of woman who would become weak and obedient after being raped by someone? No way. At that time, only one of them would be able to survive. Although Empress Luan Xing wanted to kill him now, this wasn't a conflict that couldn't be resolved. However, if he ended up forcing himself onto her, their conflict would genuinely become one that would only conclude with the death of one of them. The waiting game continued. Another 2 months passed, and Ling Han reached the peak stage of the high extreme. His breaking through to the next cultivation level was imminent. This was the opportunity that he had been waiting for, summoning heavenly tribulation. Heaven was boundless and earth was vast. Among them, heavenly tribulation was the greatest. Heavenly tribulation wouldn't affect unrelated people, yet this sealed-off space would definitely be shattered open. At that time, Ling Han would be able to find an opportunity to escape. Anyhow, he hadn't been able to comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree, so it had taken him the best part of a year to finally complete this final step. Rumble. Even saints at the Genesis tier couldn't obstruct the overwhelming might of the heavenly tribulation. Thunderclouds materialized in the sky and started to deal their brutal punishment. Huh. The notionless saint looked up in surprise and said, **TY brat, what divine pill have you taken? Not even a year has passed, yet you've already gone from the late stage of the high extreme to the peak stage. In fact, you're already ready to advance to the consummate level? Advancing from the late stage of the high extreme to the peak stage of the high extreme in under a year wasn't too astonishing. After all, this could be achieved as long as one had enough natural treasures. However, was the heavenly Tao something that could be comprehended so easily? The notionless saint didn't know about the demonic power source in Ling Han's body. Although there was only a shred of it remaining, it was still more than enough to help Ling Han break through to the peak stage of the mountain river tier. Haha, so that's what you're planning? You want to borrow the might of the heavenly tribulation to shatter this sealed-off space that I created? The notionless saint chuckled giddily and said, "Brat, you sure have underestimated me." Boom! A bolt of lightning streaked toward Ling Han. Ling Han prepared to deal with the heavenly tribulation. There was no other thought running through his mind at this moment, and he actively shattered the godly bones in his body. He was going to accept the baptism of the heavenly tribulation. Empress Luan Xing retreated to the side to watch. Although divine lightning continued to thunder down, one wouldn't be swept up in the heavenly tribulation as long as they didn't actively launch an attack toward it. Of course, the heavenly tribulation would still extend its attacks toward her if Ling Han attacked her and she struck back. Ling Han's physique has clearly reached a toughness of level 4 godly metal already, so how were his godly bones shattered by the divine lightning so easily? Chapter 11:26, Don't be like that. Chapter 11:26, Don't be like that. Could it be that Ling Han is shattering his godly bones himself? This was the only possibility that Empress Luan Xing could think of. However, why was Ling Han doing this? He was doing just fine, so what was the point of shattering his own godly bones? One had to realize that the toughness of Ling Han's godly bones was already on par with level 4 godly metal. It could be said that he had the ability to pass the heavenly tribulation lying down. Is he tempering his godly bones? She was surprised, and then stunned. If his godly bones become stronger, just how freakish will his defensive ability become? Of course, even a defensive ability on par with level 5 godly metal was as weak as paper before her. However, based on Ling Han's actions, it was clear that his defensive ability would continue to grow with his cultivation level. It would continue to remain slightly stronger than his actual cultivation level. This was a terrifying notion. This man who came from a small world, why does he possess such an astonishing ability? Is he also from some ancient divine tribe? Fuck. The notionless saint also swore in surprise. His cultivation level was even higher than Empress Luan Xing, and he had also lived for much longer than her. However, he had never heard of such a freakish physique before, much less seen one. He had initially thought that Ling Han's powerful physique was a result of him ingesting some invaluable treasure. In other words, his physique becoming so strong was just a one-off event. Now, however, he realized that it could actually grow stronger along with Ling Han's cultivation level. Is this brat also from some large clan? The notionless saint felt as if he were dreaming. Having someone with a 9-snake tribe bloodline appear was already a rare event. The 9-snake tribe was an ancient divine tribe, and they were already lost from the immortal realm. However, Ling Han's incredible talent was definitely no weaker than Empress Luan Xing's. Is he also a descendant of some ancient divine tribe? The notionless saint's astonishment was gradually replaced by delight. If the descendants of 2 ancient divine tribes mate, just how freakishly talented will their offspring be? Such an offspring had never appeared before, not even in the ancient past. This was because the populations of these ancient divine tribes numbered far too few. Although there had been a few prodigies from these tribes in the distant past, none of them had ever ended up marrying each other. I can't wait to see the results, he murmured to himself. Ling Han crushed his godly bones and accepted the tempering offered by the heavenly tribulation. At the same time, he also continued to channel the indestructible Heaven Scroll as he elevated his cultivation level to a greater height. Heavenly tribulation was nothing to Ling Han, and its most important purpose was to temper his godly bones. There was nothing more for him to do, so he decided to retrieve his divine demon sword. Since this sword could improve in quality through swallowing godly metal, perhaps it would also receive some benefits by being tempered by the heavenly tribulation. Half a day's time quickly trickled by. Ling Han circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid and reformed his godly bones. Even though he was in a closed-off realm, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth still surged into his body and consolidated his Tao foundation. Combined with the rich life essence in the tomb, he was naturally able to recover all of his vitality. His aura swarmed about vigorously, displaying the exuberance of his vitality. Ling Han descended from the sky and slipped into a new change of clothes. His old clothes had naturally been blasted into dust by the violent strikes of the heavenly tribulation. He frowned slightly as he looked up at the sky. This was because this space had actually continued to grow even under the ferocious attacks of the tribulation. This space had expanded to a size large enough for him to undergo the tribulation, in effect preventing the latter from destroying it. As expected of a saint, this was an ability that he couldn't even fathom. *TY brat, who would have thought? You managed to surprise me again. The notionless saint laughed heartily and said, the toughness of your physique is probably on par with level 5 godly metal now, am I correct? Ling Han knew that he couldn't hide this from a saint, even though this saint was already dead, and only had a wisp of his soul remaining. He carefully checked over his body before answering, not yet. It's far stronger than level 4 godly metal, but there's still some distance before it can reach the state of level 5 godly metal. Perhaps Ling Han would need to form a 5th mountain and river and pass another heavenly tribulation before his godly bones could be tempered to a toughness of level 5 godly metal. Hurry up and make me a disciple, the notionless saint shouted enthusiastically. I'm just going to ignore you, Ling Han said. He sat down and continued to cultivate. Although the notionless saint still possessed incredible powers, just being powerful alone was useless when it came to copulating and making kids. He humphed and said, do you two want to stay here forever? This place is fine, Ling Han said with a smile. It's rich with life essence, and that makes it perfect for cultivation. He naturally wouldn't back down. We'll wait and see. The notionless saint disappeared in anger. Time flew by. 3 months, 9 months, 1 year. Ling Han and Empress Luanxing had already been trapped in this tower for a full year's time. Although this was an insignificant amount of time for immortals, the fact that their confinement could extend into decades, centuries, and even millennia made this increasingly unbearable. Ling Han's cultivation had already shot to the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. His next step would be to either form 5 mountains and rivers, or advance into the sun-moon tier and set foot in a completely new cultivation level. However, the notionless saint's patience was already wearing thin. He issued another warning through the stone tablet, saying, my time is limited. You two have forced me to do this. Oi, you're not going to kill us, are you? Also, how is your time limited? Aren't you already dead? Ling Han said with a chuckle. Humph, I refine my own divine sense, so how can I survive for much longer? The notionless saint's voice was cold, and he said, since you're not willing to take initiative, I'm left with no option but to force that little girl to take initiative. Boom. Empress Luanxing's aura suddenly became incredibly terrifying. In this instant, she recovered her cultivation as a heavenly body tier elite. However, Ling Han didn't believe this to be good news. Quite the contrary, in fact. The notionless saint had already issued such threats, so he definitely didn't have anything good in mind. Empress Luanxing's appearance was once again shrouded by an aura of primal chaos. Her body also shimmered as it became partly hidden and partly visible, though it was still as stunning and as enchanting as ever. She raised her head to look at Ling Han, and Ling Han felt as if he had been locked onto by a wolf, even though he couldn't see her breathtakingly beautiful eyes. This feeling wasn't that of a rabbit being locked onto by a hungry wolf. Rather, it was that of a male wolf being locked onto by a female wolf in heat. *TTY Senior. What the hell did you do? Ling Han asked in shock. Hee hee, I merely put her in heat, the notionless saint said with a chuckle. Okay, my job here is done. I'll leave now and leave you two to have fun. Old B** starred. Stop right where you. Pung. Empress Luan Xing leaped over before Ling Han could even finish his sentence. She embraced him tightly, and like a female leopard in heat, tried to forcefully push him onto the ground. No, no, no. She was more like a beautiful snake who had coiled around his body. Oi, oi, oi. I've already restrained myself, so can't you show some restraint too? Ling Han tried his best to break free from Empress Luan Xing as he spoke, yet it was futile even though he had already reached the consummate level of the mountain river tier. After all, how could he resist an opponent who was at the heavenly body tier? Empress Luan Xing moaned softly. There was no reason for this, yet her moan was filled with a bewitching seductiveness that caused a lustful heat to spread through Ling Han's body. Empress Luan Xing was a breathtaking beauty who could hook a man's soul with a single glance. Even Shui Yinyu's beauty was eclipsed by her. She was like a village girl before Empress Luan Xing. What man could turn down such a stunning beauty, especially when she was actively asking to be taken? Ling Han gritted his teeth. Although he had dreamed of capturing and spanking the Empress after he attained a supreme cultivation, that had merely been a dream. Taking advantage of others while they were weak was not what a man should do. Empress Luan Xing had already started to kiss Ling Han. She continued to look for his lips, and when she couldn't find them, she would simply kiss him somewhere else, anywhere else. Ling Han really wanted to slap himself. He was actually trying to escape from a stunning beauty and heat? Was he retarded? Rip? A large chunk of his clothes was ripped off. Even his ferocious weapon was almost revealed. Would little Han be fucked by the Empress? Chapter 11:27, Principles. Chapter 11:27, Principles. How unreserved. You're the mighty Empress, so how can your willpower be so weak? Ling Han's heart thumped against his chest. She was a stunning beauty who could hook a man's heart with her flawless figure with a single glance. Back when he hadn't seen her face yet, the image of her figure would still drift into his mind from time to time. Now, however, she was actually throwing herself at him. Moreover, she even allowed him to witness her true appearance. How tempting was this? Ling Han tried to resist, yet his hands involuntarily grabbed her voluptuous breasts again. Fuck, why did I place my hands there? It must be because they're too big a target. I reached over without even knowing. So big, so erect, so soft, so bouncy. Ling Han gulped with great difficulty. He was finally able to experience the amazing sensations this time. He shook his head vigorously. Now wasn't the time to think of such matters. Rip. The Empress couldn't contain herself any longer, and she started to rip off more of Ling Han's clothes. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Ling Han cursed in his mind. His body flashed, and he disappeared into the Black Tower. A dazed look flashed across Empress Luan Xing's eyes as Ling Han's body suddenly vanished from her embrace. Her reactions were slightly sluggish under the effects of her lust. Huh. The notionless saint's voice sounded again, and he said, Spatial God Tool? It can't be. Even if he hid into a Spatial God Tool, the Spatial God Tool itself shouldn't have disappeared. As expected, that old geezer didn't leave. Ling Han grumbled in the Black Tower. Then, he felt a strong urge to slap himself across the face. A stunning beauty had actively thrown herself at him, yet he had actually hidden in the Black Tower? Did he have any feelings for Empress Luan Xing? Ling Han had to admit that this Empress charm was already transcendent above everything else. Even his heart would thump in excitement every time he saw her. Yet, he had actually fled from her embrace just like that? Just thinking about this made him feel like he was a hypocrite. He clearly lusted after her, so why was he acting like a saint? I'm not acting like a saint. It's just that I'll feel guilt and regret if I take her like that. Moreover, my aim is to reach the pinnacle of cultivation. If there are any weaknesses in my mind, I'll definitely be affected when I'm trying to comprehend the heavenly Tao in the future. Perhaps it might even lead to my death. My principle is to retain a clear conscience. As such, there's a line that I simply can't cross. With this in mind, his emotions gradually settled down. It was also because of this reason that he chose to expose the secret of the Black Tower rather than to cave in facing his lust and tangle with Empress Luanxing. Small Tower suddenly appeared beside him and said, "You can tell that person that I have a way to reincarnate him." Ling Han was dazed for a moment. Then, he almost jumped up in anger, shouting, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" He had been trapped in this place for almost 2 years. Firstly, you didn't ask. Secondly, you didn't enter the Black Tower, either. I thought you were enjoying your time with that Empress and didn't want to leave, Small Tower said calmly. This dude, Ling Han muttered in his mind. However, he couldn't help but reflect on his actions. He had remained especially honest these 2 years. Was he satisfied with his current situation due to Empress Luanxing's irresistible charm? He was astonished upon realizing this. The Empress' charm was far too incredible. It was so strong that he had been affected without even knowing it. Ling Han collected his thoughts and said, "That old geezer only has a wisp of his soul remaining." Moreover, he refined his own divine sense and brought himself closer to death. However, you're saying that you can still save him? Correct. Small Tower had always been frank with its words. It said, the reincarnation tree can help him maintain the last remnants of his soul. Moreover, when you unlock the next level of the Black Tower, he'll be able to gather the power of the 5 elements and forge a 5-element body. 5-element body? That sounds so badass, Ling Han said. Tell him that forging the 5-element body is an act going against the heavens. It'll cause his immortal tribulation to occur 10 times as often. Immortal tribulation? Ling Han asked. Am I obligated to answer all of your questions? Small Tower rebutted. Then, it answered its own question and said, no. So, don't waste any more of my precious time. I have to continue repairing the Black Tower. If it weren't for the fact that I need you to become more powerful, I wouldn't even come out to speak to you. Sigh, what a troublesome master. I need to take care of everything for him. Its body slowly became transparent and disappeared as it spoke. Fuck, have you ever treated me like your master? Ling Han mumbled. He calmed down and collected his thoughts. Shio. He exited the Black Tower with a flash. A seductive moan traveled into his ears, and he was immediately pulled into Empress Luanxing's embrace. This Empress hadn't activated her divine patterns while embracing him, just in other words. She hadn't restrained him using her martial intent, and it was because of this that he had been able to hide in the Black Tower. However, her divine patterns were activated this time, and Ling Han was genuinely restrained. *TTY Senior, don't you want to take revenge? He frantically shouted. Don't you want to return to the Genesis tier? You saw just then, didn't you? I also have astonishing secrets. I can help you forge a 5-element body. However, the problem is that you'll have to face the immortal tribulation 10 times more often. What? There was a hint of pure shock in Notionless Saint's voice, and he said emotionally, Brat, is what you say true? If he could live on, and if he could take revenge with his own 2 hands, why would he still refine his own fruits of cultivation in preparation for someone else? Of course it's true. Release the technique on her first. Ling Han shouted. Hee, you really are one strange lad, the Notionless Saint commented. Fine, I'm interested to hear about your idea. Pa. Empress Luanxing suddenly stopped moving. However, she also lost all of her strength, and she immediately collapsed into Ling Han's lap. Ling Han had been busy trying to free himself from her embrace when she had been taking initiative just then. Now that she fell silent, he was able to clearly feel just how soft, just how hot, and just how supple her body was. His mouth instantly became dry as a primal urge welled up inside him. His feelings at this moment proved the saying to be true: a concubine was better than a wife. A lover was better than a concubine, and an unattainable lover was better than an attainable lover one. He had rejected her when she had opened herself up to him, and now that it was all over, his heart became itchy with desire. Ling Han hurriedly took a deep breath. He drew on all his willpower to place Empress Luanxing aside, and he said, "Sh*TTY Senior, I'll bring you to a place. Don't resist." Nonsense. I can forge spatial god tools myself, so of course I understand this concept, Notionless Saint said. However, the remnants of my soul have suppressed underground this entire time. It was suppressed using the power of heaven, and once it becomes exposed, I'll be left with only two options: fuse it into someone else's body, or have it dissipate and vanish. It's impossible for my soul to return underground. So, you'd better not be lying to me. Otherwise, I'll definitely kill you before I vanish. Ling Han waved his hand and said, don't worry. I won't give you any reason to kill me." "Very well, I'm coming out now." Notionless Saint was a decisive person, and the columns in the tower instantly lit up. A ball of white light hovered into Ling Han's vision. Ling Han released his divine sense and wrapped it around this ball of light. Shio. He entered the black tower with the white ball of light. Chapter 11:28, Immortal Tribulation. Chapter 11:28, Immortal Tribulation. "What?" The white ball of light instantly cried out in astonishment after entering the black tower. Of course, this cry was actually just the fluctuation of one's divine sense. Notionless Saint had lost his body long ago. As such, he wasn't able to speak aloud. "Brat, how is the space within your spatial god tool so huge? It's almost like a genuine world." If this saint still had a physical body, he would definitely be flailing about in shock, excited to the point of almost fainting. At this moment, Notionless Saint finally believed that Ling Han possessed the ability to help him reform his body and give him a second lease on life. After all, he would need the reincarnation flower if he wanted to reincarnate. However, this flower would only bloom once every 10 billion years. It was tremendously difficult to obtain, even for saints. Although there weren't many saints, the immortal realm was incredibly vast, meaning the absolute number of saints was actually not all that low. That being the case, how intense would the competition for the reincarnation flower be? However, he was stunned after seeing the space inside Ling Han's spatial god tool. He could also refine spatial god tools, yet even if he gave his best effort, he would only be able to refine one with an internal space equivalent to that of an imperial palace. If he refined one any larger, the space inside would become extremely unstable and face the threat of crumbling at any moment. This had to do with the path that one traveled after reaching the Genesis tier. Though they were all saints, the gulf between those at the low extreme, medium extreme, and high extreme was basically insurmountable. Ling Han led Notionless Saint to the reincarnation tree and said, "Your divine sense won't wilt here. In fact, it can even be nurtured. When I become more powerful, I'll gather the power of the 5 elements and help you forge a new body." The ball of white light that was Notionless Saint wrapped around one of the branches of the reincarnation tree. He sensed it for a moment before exclaiming, "It's true. My divine sense can actually be nurtured. Heavens! Could this be a reincarnation tree?" Although the reincarnation flower was precious, it would at least bloom once every 10 billion years. In other words, it could be obtained within 2 generations of saints. However, what about the reincarnation tree? This was a peculiar tree that people regarded as something not from this world. Moreover, it needed a whopping 12 trillion years to reach maturity. 12 trillion years. What kind of concept was this? Before a reincarnation tree, even saints could only acknowledge that they were juniors. Their lifespan was not even 1/10 that of a reincarnation tree. Notionless Saint's voice trembled as he asked, "Brat, which Saint King's inheritance and treasures did you receive?" Those at the Genesis tier were referred to as saints. Those at the low extreme were referred to as small saints. Those at the medium extreme as medium saints. Those at the high extreme as great saints. And those at the consummate level as Saint Kings. Although they were all saints, each increase in minor level in the Genesis tier was unbelievably difficult. It could be said that most saints would only ever reach the level of small saint, even up until their deaths. They would still be a long way off reaching the level of a medium saint. Notionless Saint was one of these small saints. She was like a mere ant compared to a Saint King. Ling smiled and asked, "Senior, are you happy with this place?" "Yes. Yes, of course." Notionless Saint was over the moon with delight. He could finally take revenge for himself. After all, who would want to rely on others if they didn't need to? Moreover, he could live on and even recover his past cultivation. This naturally delighted him even more. "So, can you let us out now?" Ling asked. "Of course." Notionless Saint answered without any hesitation. "Oh, that's right. What's Immortal Tribulation?" Ling suddenly asked. Notionless Saint faltered for a moment before saying, "You negotiated with me without even knowing what Immortal Tribulation is?" Ling smiled and said, "There's a tool spirit in this god tool, and it informed me of such an existence. I merely repeated its words." Notionless Saint believed in Ling ability to give him a new lease in life even more upon hearing these words. This was because people would lie, but he had never heard of spirit tools lying before. He pondered for a moment and said, "Saints have the ability to form new worlds. However, it's also because of this that we invoke the jealousy of heaven. As such, we'll suffer from the so-called immortal tribulation once every 100 million years. This is a curse from heaven and earth, and it brings about great disasters, great illnesses, or even heavenly tribulation. It's even possible that saints will experience great misfortunes and come across assassins and such. If you go into hiding and avoid an immortal tribulation, the next one that arrives after 100 million years will become even more terrifying. Moreover, immortal tribulations are never-ending. They'll keep arriving until one doesn't have the ability to resist them any longer. At that time, one will die, even if they still haven't reached the end of their lifespan yet. Only by becoming stronger will one be able to continually dissolve the threat posed by immortal tribulation. Immortal tribulation is like a whip that relentlessly pressures you to grow stronger. Ling was astonished. Saints seem like towering figures who are invincible throughout the world, yet they actually have to suffer through such curses. No wonder there are so few saints. After becoming a saint, advancing forward another step was as difficult as transcending heaven. However, immortal tribulation would arrive once every 100 million years, regardless of whether one had grown stronger or not. If one hadn't become stronger, perhaps they would luck out and pass an immortal tribulation. However, they would definitely be killed by the next one. So, cultivating is like rowing a boat upstream. If you don't advance, you'll be pushed back. If you're pushed back, death will be your only fate. Notionless Saint revealed the brutal truth about cultivation. If you forge a new body from the 5 elements, you'll have to face immortal tribulation once every 10 million years, Ling said. That's a matter I'll have to deal with after recovering my cultivation as a saint. Anyhow, I've already experienced several immortal tribulations, so the first few won't pose any danger to me. Notionless Saint was brimming with confidence, and he continued, "I've already walked the path of a saint once. When I recover to become a saint again, I'll definitely have the ability to kill those traitorous disciples after cultivating for another tens of millions of years." Ling nodded. Although a body forged from the 5 elements would cause a mortal tribulation to arrive 10 times more often, that was still a period of 10 million years. He still had yet to reach 50 in this second life, and he had only lived for 200 or so years in his previous life. Thus, a period of 10 million years seemed astronomical to him. "Okay, Senior, let us go out first." Ling left the Black Tower with Notionless Saint. This matter had been resolved more smoothly than he had expected. He had only hidden into the Black Tower because he hadn't wanted to hurt Empress Luanxing. As a result, he had exposed the secret of his peculiar spatial god tool. To his surprise, the ensuing series of events ended with him obtaining Notionless Saint. Notionless Saint would nurture his divine sense in the Black Tower, so it was only natural that he would have to help Ling Han in return, right? When Ling Han exited the Black Tower, he saw that Empress Luanxing had already returned to normal. She was standing there by herself, and there was an indescribable sense of loneliness about her. This sight would cause one to develop an urge to embrace and free her from the loneliness. The charm of this empress was tremendous. Ling Han coughed as he composed himself and said, "Your Majesty, we'll be able to leave soon." There was a complicated look in Empress Luanxing's eyes as she gazed at him. Her mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. Initially, she had already suppressed that faint thought in her mind and decided to kill Ling Han. However, who would have expected such a huge turn of events? Her cultivation had been suppressed, and she had ended up even weaker than Ling Han. However, Ling Han hadn't taken advantage of the situation to force himself onto her. This required immense willpower and restraint. She obviously knew just how charming she was. What weighed on her mind the most was naturally the events that had occurred just then. She had been manipulated by a saint, and as a result, become like a beast in heat. She had actively thrown herself at Ling Han, and had even forcefully pushed him down. Yet, Ling Han had actually guarded his chastity even under such tremendous temptation. Was there something wrong with Ling Han's manhood? Impossible. She had tangled with him just then, and she could clearly feel the ferocious nature of his weapon. It had definitely been raring to go, and it had definitely been prepared to attack her. Moreover, she had seen the lust glimmering in Ling Han's eyes. However, he had restrained himself. In fact, he had even chosen to expose the secret of his spatial god tool, if only to protect her purity. The Empress had to admit that she was moved. Chapter 1129, Returning to the Joint Peace Planet. Chapter 1129, Returning to the Joint Peace Planet. Ever since being groped by Ling Han, the Empress had naturally viewed him as a perverted, vulgar, and shameless scoundrel. However, after spending close to 2 years together, she realized that Ling Han's conduct was nothing short of noble. The restraint that he had shown at the end even more so required overwhelming willpower and resolution. Moreover, he had even exposed his precious treasure in order to protect her purity. It could be said that his conduct was blindingly noble. Could she still kill Ling Han? Of course not. That would be repaying kindness with hatred. In fact, Empress Luanxing rejoiced slightly in the fact that she had been trapped with Ling Han, and not some other man. If it were another man, she would have definitely lost her purity and chastity already. Just thinking about such a possibility made her shudder and feel a strong sense of lingering fear. Moreover, in order to ensure that he received a disciple, Notionless Saint would have definitely made her copulate several times. This was even more terrifying. In a sense, Ling Han was a big benefactor of hers. In fact, she owed him so much that she wouldn't be able to repay him this entire lifetime. The problem was, the memories of her kissing, hugging, and intertwining with him were all seared into her mind as well. How could she relax upon recalling these events? There was a heavy burden on her, and it was her goal to become the strongest cultivator in the world. There was a blemish in her Tao heart now, and this would potentially affect her future cultivation. What could she do about this? How could she not be worried? In the end, she could only reply with a soft This was her way of saying, "I know." Ling Han could understand her difficulties to a certain degree. However, he wasn't female, after all, and he was more so not Empress Luanxing. Perhaps he could only understand less than 1% of what she was feeling at the moment. "Your Majesty, let's pretend the events of these past few days never occurred. What do you say?" Empress Luanxing was riled up upon hearing this. Only she could say that. You touched me, kissed me, and embraced me, yet you want to pretend none of that happened with a mere few words. If Ling Han knew of her thoughts, he would definitely shout that he was being wronged, because it was in fact this empress that had touched him, kissed him, and embraced him. Okay? If it hadn't been for his strong willpower, there was even a strong possibility that she would have fucked him. Unfaithful man. Empress Luan Xing scolded in her mind. However, she instantly chided her own thoughts. Was this man worthy of being her husband? No way. She humphed and said, or else, perhaps you wanted to remember them and have more fantasies about me? Oh, she's truly not cute at all. She's far too haughty. Ling Han sighed in his mind. Being beautiful indeed gave one the right to be whimsical. Although she had thrown a barb at him, he couldn't dislike her no matter what. He nodded in his mind. He definitely had to keep his distance from this stunning beauty. Otherwise, he would genuinely lose himself to her. Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing both remained silent and lost in their own thoughts. Meanwhile, under the manipulation of Notionless Saint, a starship surprisingly appeared within the large tomb. Although Notionless Saint had been severely wounded and even had his saintly origin stolen, he had still been a saint, after all. He had made many preparations before his death. This hidden starship, being one of them, had prepared this for his future disciple. However, it was possible for him to live a second life now, so of course he took this starship out to use now. This was a small starship, and it was only fitted with a small number of defensive formations. These formations were used to deal with meteoroids or black holes that suddenly appeared in the galaxy. They didn't possess any offensive ability. The starship was too small, after all, so it was impossible to carve too many formations onto it. Nothing could have been done about this. Notionless Saint had only prepared this in the moments before his death, so what time did he have to make things perfect? He returned to the Black Tower after summoning the starship. Only his divine sense was left right now, and he had even refined his own saintly might. Thus, it was impossible for him to stay alone in the outside world for too long. Instead, it was necessary for him to attach himself to external objects such as the reincarnation tree. Not only would this allow him to live on, but it would even allow him to live on better. This was a godly tree that required 12 trillion years to grow. Could its effects not be spectacular? Relying on the preparations that he had left, it was still possible for him to suppress the heavenly body tier elites in this large tomb. In fact, it was even possible for him to suppress weaker Eternal River tier elites. Once he left this large tomb, however, he would merely be a damaged soul that had refined his own saintly might, no less. In other words, he would pose absolutely no threat. Apart from giving Ling Han some suggestions, he could do absolutely all. Meanwhile, Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing were both sitting inside the starship. There were no resting rooms or anything of the sort, and there was only a single cabin. However, this cabin was definitely bigger than Ling Han's cloud-piercing shuttle. It was able to fit around 10 people. The atmosphere was quite delicate, with neither of them speaking to each other. However, they were stuck in a small space. After all, so Ling Han could still smell the mesmerizing bodily fragrance of the Empress. This filled his body with desire. He had seen the Empress' true appearance before, and he had even experienced intimate contact with her as well. This allowed his imagination to run wild. Don't let your imagination run wild, Empress Luan Xing suddenly said in reprimand. Ling Han rolled his eyes. So, you even know what's going on in my mind? He smiled faintly and said, okay, I won't think about that anymore. You're still thinking about that, Empress Luan Xing said in accusation. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, oh, really? After seeing the seductive and charming side of this Empress, it was extremely hard for him to fear her anymore. His only complaint was that this Empress was mighty, seductive, pure, and stunningly beautiful, yet for some reason, didn't possess the adorable charm of a girl. If she were to flirt with him in a sweet and adorable voice, it was extremely likely that he wouldn't be able to control himself, even with his strong willpower. Empress Luan Xing seethed with anger. This man actually showed her no respect at all. He had revolted. She was fuming, and she felt an urge to suppress Ling Han. However, she was instantly surprised by her own thoughts. Her emotions had actually been affected by a dirty man. Crap, it was all over. After experiencing intimate contact with that man, she couldn't wipe him from her mind anymore. This result was partly because she had remained too pure before. Otherwise, why would Ling Han be etched so deeply in her mind? They hadn't done anything truly sexual, after all. The starship continued through the galaxy. They didn't experience any accidents or disasters that were common in the galaxy, and thus they arrived back at the joint peace planet in just a few days' time. Fortunately, neither the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire nor the J-Drop Majestic Empire had attacked the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire during the 2 years that Empress Luan Xing had been absent. This was understandable, though. After all, how were they to know that Empress Luan Xing had only just returned? However, Ling Han was feeling quite pissed off. This was because the Majestic Heaven Sect had already finished selecting disciples a year ago. In other words, he had already lost his opportunity to go. His 3 brothers, as well as Helian Tianyun and his disciple, Ding Ping, had all successfully entered the Majestic Heaven Sect and gone to the Flying Cloud Planet. He had also heard that the Rain Emperor and Ding Ping had been granted the status of a so-called Seed One. As such, they would enjoy special treatment and priority nurturing from the sect. In addition to them, Shui Yinyu had also successfully entered the sect. Although she wasn't especially outstanding, her age combined with her cultivation level was sufficient for her to qualify into the sect. It was just that she couldn't become a seed. The new disciples of the Majestic Heaven Sect were divided into 3 category seeds: outstanding disciples and ordinary disciples. Thus, excluding the 2 seeds of Rain Emperor and Ding Pinghlian Tianyun and Feng Piyun were both granted the status of outstanding disciple. Meanwhile, Murong Qing and Shui Yinyu were both ordinary disciples. As for Ling Han, where should he go next? Chapter 1130, Setting Off for the Majestic Heaven Sect. Chapter 1130, Setting Off for the Majestic Heaven Sect. The Majestic Heaven Sect was extremely powerful. Although it didn't wish to dominate the surrounding planets, there was a great elite at the Eternal River tier watching over the sect. As such, it wasn't afraid to retaliate against those who provoked it. It could be said that the Majestic Heaven Sect could casually reject to accept a disciple, even if it were Empress Luan Xing who personally requested the Majestic Heaven Sect to accept them. In any case, the relationship between Ling Han and Empress Luan Xing wasn't that great anyway. Because Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner had refined some mountain river stones before, the combination of their age and their cultivation level qualified them as prodigies. Thus, they were also accepted into the Majestic Heaven Sect as ordinary disciples. Almost all of Ling Han's friends had left the imperial capital and headed off to the Majestic Heaven Sect. Ling Han started to mull over his next move. Where is Ling Han? A majestic and dignified voice sounded outside his residence. This was Chu Qiushue, the great commander of the Imperial Guards. Ling Han was slightly surprised. This great commander only answered to Empress Luan Xing. The fact that she had come here signified that Empress Luan Xing had issued an imperial decree. TSK, how pompous. You embraced me and tried to sate your lust with my body, yet you're sending an underling to deliver a message now? He opened his door and walked out, only to see that Chu Qiushue was dressed in a full suit of armor. There was a hint of might to her beauty, and she was like a radiant flower that blossomed among the army. It was a shame that this radiant flower only listened to the commands of Empress Luan Xing. Ling Han had never heard any rumors about her liking a man, and it was extremely likely that she was mesmerized by the Empress, so much so that she had forgotten her own identity as a female. Ling Han clasped his hands in salute and said, "My respects to the great commander." As a fellow official of the Majestic Empire, he didn't have to kneel as long as Chu Qiushue didn't insist on it. There was a strange look in Chu Qiushue's eyes as she gazed at Ling Han. He was such an ordinary man, so how was he worthy of being the recipient of the Empress' imperial decree twice? So be it if he had been the recipient of the first imperial decree. The Empress had needed to borrow his achievements to put the officials and nobility back in their place. However, the imperial decree this time was completely for a private matter. When did he become acquainted with Her Majesty? No matter how Chu Qiushue guessed, she would never fathom that the Empress had actually lived with Ling Han for the entire 2 years that she had been missing. Moreover, there had been some extremely intimate moments between them. She would definitely go crazy if she were to learn of this. Her Majesty asked me to deliver this to you. She handed a letter to him and said, "This is a letter pinned by Her Majesty for the 9th King. Her Majesty wants you to deliver this to the 9th King, and as long as the 9th King is willing, Her Majesty said that you can become her follower. That way, you can also cultivate in the Majestic Heaven Sect." Ling Han was astonished by her words, so much so that he forgot to accept the letter. Only when Chu Xiuxue coughed loudly did he come back to his senses and accept the letter. "I'll take my leave now." Chu Xiuxue looked at Ling Han deeply before turning around to leave. She couldn't understand why Her Majesty wanted Ling Han to deliver the letter. Not only that, but Her Majesty had even sent her over to deliver the message. Ling Han was astonished because he knew that the 9th King had already been accepted as a disciple by the Majestic Heaven Sect and had already gone to the Flying Cloud Planet. Moreover, that unreliable 9th King had actually been chosen as a seed. Although Empress Luan Xing said that she wanted him to deliver a letter, she was, in effect, also opening a back door for him to enter the Majestic Heaven Sect, albeit as a follower of the 9th King. In the Majestic Heaven Sect, only seeds were allowed to have followers who could cultivate in the sect. Although these followers couldn't receive the resources of the sect, they could follow their masters and listen to the lectures on the great Tao given by great elites. Moreover, Venerable Trinity himself would occasionally give tips to the seeds. Thus, although followers were mere servants, an astounding number of prodigies still fought tooth and nail to win a spot of a follower. Empress Luan Xing wasn't influential enough to have the Majestic Heaven Sect break their rules and accept Ling Han as a disciple. However, she used another method to open a door for Ling Han. Ling Han sounded especially narcissistic as he mumbled to himself, "TSK, it looks like I'm quite charismatic, huh? Even the Empress has been mesmerized by me. Should I accept this offer?" Ling Han pondered over this for a moment. In the end, he decided to accept Empress Luan Xing's act of goodwill. His 3 brothers, his disciple, and his lover were all at the Majestic Heaven Sect. In addition, his enemies in Zhaoluan and Sha Yuan had also gone to the Majestic Heaven Sect. If he stayed in the imperial capital, what could he do apart from teasing the Empress? However, was it easy to tease the Empress? Ling Han made some preparations. He sold all of the alchemical pills he owned, and then used the true origin stones that he received to purchase a large number of materials. He couldn't give up on alchemy. The demonic power source was close to being used up, so it was impossible for him to maintain his rapid speed of cultivation. Thus, it was necessary for him to return to his old path of using alchemy to support cultivation. Half a month passed, and Ling Han decided to visit Old Man Su first. After that, he left the Joint Peace Planet and head to the Flying Cloud Planet on Notionless Saint starship. Why couldn't he use his cloud-piercing shuttle? The lack of defensive formations was only part of the problem. The more important problem was that his cloud-piercing shuttle lacked galactic coordinates. There was no sense of up, down, left, or right in the vast galaxy, so how could one determine where they were headed? Galactical coordinates were the key to navigation. However, these coordinates would only be useful when paired with star charts. In addition, these star charts could only be displayed with the help of extremely large formations. Thus, it was basically impossible for small shuttles, such as the cloud-piercing shuttle, to navigate through the galaxy. If Ling Han were to attempt his journey with the cloud-piercing shuttle, there would only be one possible outcome: he would become lost in the vast galaxy. If he were lucky, perhaps he would make it to an unfamiliar planet after hundreds or even thousands of years. Of course, the condition was that he had enough true origin stones to fuel the cloud-piercing shuttle. Otherwise, the cloud-piercing shuttle would become no different from other ordinary shuttles. Ling Han steered the starship. This didn't require much technique or skill. There was only a formation, and the starship would fly by itself after the galactic coordinates were entered and the true origin stones were inserted. Only when the starship came across unexpected events such as asteroids or planetary explosions would one need to physically steer it away from the predetermined route. Ling Han entered the boundless galaxy. Most of the time, he would simply comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree. He would only leave the Black Tower occasionally in order to check on the situation and see whether there was any risk of accidents. It would take a long 3 months to get to the Flying Cloud Planet. Ling Han was currently sitting under the reincarnation tree, and Notionless Saint was imparting his cultivation knowledge to Kan Yi, Yuan Qinghe, and the others. He genuinely had nothing else to do right now, being a damaged soul and all. He obviously couldn't cultivate, so this was his way of passing time. Ling Han listened from the side. This was the knowledge of a saint. After all, could the Majestic Heaven Sect compare to this? If he broke the news that there was a saint imparting his knowledge in the Black Tower, even Eternal River Tier great elites such as Venerable Trinity would beg to enter, to say nothing of Heavenly Body Tier elites. It was impossible to describe the great Tao with mere words. However, Notionless Saint had been a supreme elite once, so he naturally knew how to guide his students. This was analogous to how a black hole couldn't be seen, but one could succeed in proving its existence through observing the light rays and celestial bodies that it absorbed. The guidance provided by Notionless Saint was similar to this. Through his profound yet simple explanations, Kan Yi and the others were able to attain all kinds of comprehensions. One had to remember that they were comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree. Perhaps they couldn't grasp a concept in just one day, but what if they were given a year, or even 10 years? Brat, even if I obtain a physical body in the future, I'm still going to cultivate in this place of yours, Notionless Saint said. It's an unparalleled treasure land. Under the reincarnation tree, 1 day's worth of cultivation was equivalent to 1 year's worth. Thus, even saints couldn't resist the appeal of cultivating here. No problem, Ling Han said with a nod. If Notionless Saint could recover fully, Ling Han would have gained another powerful helper, even if Notionless Saint were only a small saint. The Azura Demon Emperor couldn't help but admire and venerate his master even more. He had obtained the services of a saint just like that. If they were in the netherworld, this would be equivalent to obtaining the help of a demon master. He involuntarily tried to wag his tail. However, he was in human form right now, so there was no tail for him to wag. This displeased him greatly. He actually wasn't a dog anymore. How infuriating. Chapter 1131. Pinnacle Level of Mountain River Tier. Chapter 1131. Pinnacle Level of Mountain River Tier. The starship sailed soundlessly in the universe. Silent and peaceful. Schwa, all of a sudden, a sword light flashed past. It was incredibly bright and condensed frightening divine patterns. In that instant, it lit up the surrounding stars, and even a distant sun paled in comparison. As this sword light swept past, the divine chains of regulations moved, and a ripple formed. Pong! Unsurprisingly, the starship was instantly smashed into smithereens. This was a small starship, and its defenses could only reach the peak stage of Sun-Moon tier, at most. Meanwhile, that strike previously was shockingly at the level of Heavenly Body tier. A human figure appeared in thin air, entwined all over with the air of primal chaos. It was indistinguishable whether it was even male or female, a tall or short figure. He stood in the galaxy and began a close observation. He seemed to be still worried, and examined every broken piece of the starship to confirm that there was not the slightest sliver of life in them. After this, he waved out a hand and summoned out a small starship, which he then steered and left. In the galaxy, the ripples returned to their initial peaceful state and returned to the state of dead silence. After a day, that small starship actually appeared once more. After circling around once in the area, it finally left. How cautious, Ling Han uttered darkly inside the Black Tower. When the starship had been attacked, he just happened to be in the Black Tower, and so did not even have to make the move to hide. When he found out this assaulter was an extremely careful person, he did not rush to leave. Instead, he patiently waited in here. True enough, the attacker made an unexpected return. This kind of caution was truly fearful. Brat, you seem to have offended a great many people, Notionless Saint said. He had already heard from Ling Han about how the starship had been attacked. It is not seem, but a fact. Ling Han cracked a grin. However, Not too long after, I would be able to push back and seize every single person that wants to harm me. Then, I shall let them suffer the consequences of their own actions." These words seemed very boastful, but notionless Saint could not find any way to refute him. With a precious treasure like the reincarnation tree, Ling Han was indeed right to be proud. Wasn't it clear that even he was moved and desired to comprehend Tao underneath this tree? Ling Han was deducing the identity of his attacker. It could be the Dark Night Hall, and could also be others. However, there were only so many elites of heavenly body tier on the joint peace planet. As long as he possessed enough power, he could completely seek out these people. After identifying their respective aura, he would be able to confirm their identity. Every single elite possessed a unique presence that belonged to them alone, and it was very, very hard for another to imitate it. Still, how should we now go to the flying cloud planet? Ling Han was feeling awkward. After having lost the galactic coordinates, it was really like he had entered into a colossal maze. Furthermore, there was not the slightest bit of upgrade, and he could only depend on blind guessing completely. The price of this was time, naturally. Perhaps when he really stepped on the land of the flying cloud planet, it would be a few decades or even a few centuries later. No matter what, I have to try my luck. Previously, the starship had already traveled for more than 2 months, and was not too far away from the flying cloud planet, so there should be a chance. Ling Han took out the cloud-piercing shuttle and tried his best to identify the correct direction before beginning his intergalactic journey. This time, he was really traveling blindly. A month later, the flying cloud planet was still far from reach, and he had completely no idea where it even was. Ling Han sighed repeatedly. He had not relaxed throughout this month, and added with the 2 months that he had traveled previously, the majority of his time was spent comprehending Tao underneath the reincarnation tree to accumulate comprehension and form the 5th mountain river. Now, his comprehension was already very deep, but on the matter of finding the flying cloud planet, he seemed to have slipped into a dead end. Another half a month later, his comprehension was already adequate. After all, Notionless Saint was by his side to supply consultation, and he also had the support of the demonic power source. He was about to break through, not to Sun-Moon tier, but the Pinnacle of Mountain River tier. Was it fast? Not in the slightest. It should be known that Ling Han possessed the reincarnation tree, and from the moment they left the large galactic tomb, he had already comprehended over 100 years' worth. If he could still manage to comprehend the secrets of forming the 5th mountain river with this, he could not possibly do so in the future. Ling Han put away the cloud-piercing shuttle and stood proudly in the galaxy. Hong, long, long. The heavenly tribulation arrived as expected. This was a power that was most omnipotent. Nothing could possibly prevent the arrival of the tribulation. Ling Han sighed. Only a year had passed, and he would have to experience a hell-like torture again. Godly bones, shatter. He took the initiative to shatter his godly bones to let them be tempered under the heavenly tribulation. Level 4 and Level 5 godly metal appeared to only have the gap of a single level, but even a 9-star genius at the peak stage of Mountain River tier would not be able to match a Sun-Moon tier cultivator that had just broken through. Similarly, there existed a massive gulf between Level 4 and Level 5 godly metal. Previously, Ling Han's physique could only be considered in between Level 4 and Level 5 godly metal, and only after experience another tempering like such would he be able to reach the level of Mountain River tier. He nodded internally. If he did not cultivate to the pinnacle of all 5 major tiers, his physique would not be able to reach the strongest level in existence. Just thinking of that was too frightening. Even if he was weak, even the Saint King could do nothing against him. However, the indestructible heaven scroll had not been his creation, so even if he was the second person to cultivate this what about the first? That elite must have died, which was why the Black Tower had been searching for a new master. The creator must have cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll to the pinnacle, yet he had still died. This meant that the pinnacle of the indestructible heaven scroll was not the pinnacle of cultivation, which was why it could be shattered by a stronger power. Ling Han gathered his scattered thoughts. He was still very far away from the peak of cultivation, so there was still no need for him to consider such matters as of yet. All the godly bones in his body were shattered. The smaller the particles they had shattered into, the more complete the tempering from the heavenly tribulation would be. There would definitely still be a difference for two masses of level 5 godly metal, just like how the low extreme could still be categorized into early stage, middle stage, late stage, and peak stage. If he was going to this, he would do his best, or he would not do it at all. Hong, long, long. Thunder rang out loudly in the void. The regulations of heaven and earth in the galaxy were very weak, and even mountain river tier cultivators were capable of flight. Furthermore, the space was very easily destroyed. With the havoc wreaked by lightning bolts as long as 30,000 meters, this place seemed to have become an incredibly bright sea of lightning. Even Ling Han felt that the tribulation this time round was out of the ordinary and was much more powerful compared to the times before. The fifth mountain river, the true Pinnacle, was not allowed by the heavens. After half a day, the heavenly tribulation disappeared and peace resumed. Meanwhile, Ling Han was standing quietly and learning through experience. Unlike previously, his power had not soared. Instead, a door had been opened to him, allowing him to further improve his power, spiking it up to the height of 7, 8, 9, or even 10 stars. But how many stars he could actually reach would depend on his natural talent and comprehension abilities and how far he could cultivate the fifth mountain river. In the distance, a weak light flickered, and he saw a starship heading straight for him. Subconsciously, Ling Han thought of hiding in the Black Tower, but he immediately realized that this was not that attacker from before, but rather his savior. Most probably, the commotion caused by the heavenly tribulation previously had been too large, and thus attracted this starship, which purposely turned around to see what was going on. Great, great. Now he finally didn't have to run around madly in the galaxy any further. Ling Han cracked a grin. Good news really followed one after another. He drew out a change appearance pill, which he then consumed. Chapter 1132, Majestic Heaven Sect. Chapter 1132, Majestic Heaven Sect. The starship arrived near Ling Han, but did not stop. It merely slowed down. When the starship was started, it would expend the largest number of true origin stones. Thus, even if they were willing to allow Ling Han to come aboard, there was completely no need for them to deliberately stop the starship. They merely had to slow down. Ling Han shot over. The starship did not stretch out its defenses, but this was very normal. With no danger anywhere, what was the point of pulling out the defense shield? It would be a complete waste of true origin stones. He landed on the deck, and there were already 3 men waiting for him there. "How may I address you?" one man asked. He was an elite of Sun Moon tier, his aura powerful, forming a suppression in terms of pure level. At first, he was very cautious, but when he sensed that Ling Han's aura was only of Mountain River tier, he immediately relaxed. Ling Han clasped his fists together in greeting and said, "My name is Han Lin. Previously, I encountered galactic pirates and managed to fortunately escape. However, now that I have lost my starship, I am unable to progress to my destination. Thankfully, you all came across me and saved me." Since that assaulter thought he had succeeded, why shouldn't he temporarily keep his identity secret and gain an environment in which he could be allowed to peacefully grow? "So it is young friend Han." The man nodded. Though he was not sure of the authenticity of Ling Han's words, if he claimed that he had been purposely waiting for them here and laid a trap or something, he was not about to believe that. After all, the galaxy was too massive, so who would be able to grasp the ship route of another? "Where are you heading to, young friend?" he asked again. "Flying Cloud Planet," Ling Han replied. The man couldn't help but smile and said, "Then it is really coincidental. We are also heading to the Flying Cloud Planet, so we shall bring you along with us, young friend." "Many thanks," Ling Han quickly said. In this immortal realm, where power meant everything, it was actually very rare for an elite to be amicable to others. The man waved him off and had one of his subordinates bring Ling Han below deck to rest. Ling Han exchanged conventional greetings with that person and found out that this was the trade ship of the Mo clan. That large man previously was named Imogu and was a core person of the Imo clan. The Imo clan was based on the southern plentiful planet, but because it was dealing in the intergalactic trading of goods, they also had a branch on various major planets and in major majestic empires, which caused the standing of the Imo clan to be very extraordinary. If the southern plentiful majestic empire wanted to harm them, all they had to do was switch location and begin turning their new home into a new base. On this trip, they were delivering a large amount of goods to the flying cloud planet. It was really a coincidence. They had only veered off their initial flight route to take a look because Ling Han's heavenly tribulation had attracted them. Ling Han made a note of this favor secretly in his heart. When they lent him a helping hand, they might not have thought of asking him to repay the favor, but if he was really ungrateful, then he was really not a man. He had indeed veered far off from the flight route from the Joint Peace Planet to the Flying Cloud Planet. However, his luck was not too bad, as he was not too far away from the Flying Cloud Planet. Thus, they merely had to travel for about another 7 days, and the starship would be able to land on the Flying Cloud Planet. Naturally, it was impossible that Imogu, as an elite of Sun-Moon tier, would take note of a minor character like Ling Han. In the following 7 days, he had not paid Ling Han a visit, and only when the starship landed and they disembarked did Ling Han finally see him again. He once again expressed his thanks to the latter. Ling Han bought a map in the city, and according to the map, realized that he was not far off from the Majestic Heaven Sect. There were actually only 2 majestic empires on the Flying Cloud Planet, the Four Seas Majestic Empire and the Great Heaven Majestic Empire. Furthermore, the territories of these 2 majestic empires added together were not as large as the territory occupied by the Majestic Heaven Sect. There was nothing to be done. Though Venerable Trinity had clearly expressed that they had no interest in taking over the world, it was a fact that the Majestic Heaven Sect had occupied such an expansive territory. How could the 2 majestic empires dare to attack them for the purpose of obtaining more territory? On the other hand, it was already quite good that the majestic empires were allowed to exist. Moreover, if the territory of an Eternal River tier elite was even smaller than Heavenly Body tier, how could it be acceptable? Thus, the current situation was something that all sides could accept and were satisfied with. Ling Han was presently in the Great Heaven Majestic Empire, and there was about a month's journey from here to the gates of the Majestic Heaven Sect, the Heavenly Wind Mountain, and this was taking into account the speed of the cloud-piercing shuttle. If it was him using his own legs to travel, that would take half a year at least. Let's set out. Ling Han took out the cloud-piercing shuttle and set off towards the Majestic Heaven Sect. 7 days later, he had entered into the territory of the Majestic Heaven Sect, but it was only after another 20-odd days that he finally arrived at the mountain gates of the Majestic Heaven Sect. Hiss! No wonder it was called the Majestic Heaven Sect. In front of him, there was a mountain peak so high that it towered into the clouds. Even if he activated the Eye of Truth, he could not see the peak. It was probably tens of thousands of meters tall, at least. This was the main peak of the Heavenly Wind Mountains, cloud-piercing peak. Aside from the main peak, there were 7 other subsidiary peaks. Similarly, they were extremely tall, but they were appropriately located, so there was not a single mountain peak that was as tall as another. Now that he had arrived here, he could not travel around with the cloud-piercing shuttle as he liked. Ling Han steered the cloud-piercing shuttle into a descent and put it away. Then, he began to travel on foot. This was an important territory of the Majestic Heaven Sect, and there were a great many places where no entry was allowed, and where various restrictions were set up. There were also disciples of the sect responsible for regular patrols. Ling Han was not here to swindle or cheat, so he had absolutely no intention of using the Black Tower to enter into forbidden territory. Instead, he traveled along the main path and arrived at the foot of a subsidiary peak. After he made some queries, he found out that outsiders usually were not allowed to trespass into the main peak and 7 subsidiary peaks. However, it was a different case in these few days. There were a few seated disciples in the sect that were currently recruiting followers, which had attracted a great many people to come and apply for the position. Previously, it had already been explained. Only seated disciples were qualified to recruit followers, and if one became a follower, Aside from being unable to gain any resources for cultivation, there was actually no difference in their treatment and the treatment of official disciples. They could even listen from the sidelines when the seated disciple was being taught by Venerable Trinity. How massive was that kind of lore? Discounting those who did not manage to enter into the Majestic Heaven Sect, even inside the Majestic Heaven Sect itself, there were a great many ordinary disciples that strived with their all to become the followers of some seated disciples. Moreover, it was definite that every seed would definitely become a supreme elite. They would be in existence at the consummate level of Sun-Moon tier at least, since the barrier to the heavenly body tier was really too hard to breach. However, wasn't the consummate level of Sun-Moon tier awesome enough? If they could rely on their help and stay by the side of such elites, it would be of extremely great help to their future development. In short, the foot of one of the subsidiary peaks, White Cloud Peak, was currently packed with people. They all longed to become the followers of one of the seeds. Every seed could only possess 3 followers at most. Naturally, that was not enough to satisfy the masses, and it was something that they would be fighting desperately over. Stand aside, stand aside. A commotion was heard from behind them, for men were clearing the path, and behind them, there was a gloomy-looking young man. His vitality was strong, so he was indeed very young, but his cultivation level had shockingly reached the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, which was very astonishing. Who is this? Being so arrogant and overbearing, could it be a key disciple? Someone nearby asked. You don't even know who he is? Why should I know him? He is Zhang Tong, Lord Yang Hao's follower. What, Yang Hao? You mean that super genius who had used a mere 600 years to reach Sun-Moon tier? That Lord Yang Hao? Of course. Hiss. Still, however awesome, it is Lord Yang. So what does it have to do with him? You don't know, right? Zhang Tong had once been a key disciple of the Majestic Heaven Sect and purposely surrendered this identity to follow Lord Yang. At the time, many people said he was dumb, but what about now? There are even some seated prodigies that wish to follow Lord Yang. Unfortunately, Lord Yang is completely disdainful of them. What? Is it real? As they spoke, those 4 people in charge of clearing the path had walked to stand behind Ling Han. The others had all obediently allowed them to pass, which made Ling Han appear very prominent. Chapter 1133, An Arrogant Follower. Chapter 1133, An Arrogant Follower. Brat, didn't you hear us tell you to get lost? The 4 men humphed coldly. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, You're quite pompous for people with weak abilities. What? One man walked forward. Do you have any idea who my young master is? Oh, who is it? Ling Han asked, smiling. He really couldn't care less. Zhang Tong, young master Tong. This man declared proudly as if he himself was that Zhang Tong. Ling Han gave an "oh" and continued. So going by that logic, you are the lapdog of a lapdog, the so-called second dog? You. The man pointed furiously at Ling Han. Are you tired of living? Oh, so this is how the Majestic Heaven Sect treats guests? Ling Han asked. Wrong. We are not the disciples of the Majestic Heaven Sect, and thus have no need to be restricted by the rules of the sect, this man said sinisterly. Then, he snapped his fingers. Brothers, let us give this guy a profound lesson. He. The other 3 men stepped out, each staring at Ling Han like they were hungry wolves that had caught sight of a little rabbit. After Ling Han had formed his 5th Mountain River tier, his aura became reserved. His whole person became as profoundly deep as the ocean, and it was very difficult to distinguish exactly how strong he was. Furthermore, it had already been a month ago since he had broken through to the pinnacle of Mountain River tier. Presently, his power had advanced to 7 stars. 7 stars of power above the peak of Mountain River tier. What kind of notion was that? He took a look at Zhang Tong and asked, These dogs of yours are barking madly, and you are not planning to take them to heel? Beat all the teeth out of his mouth. Zhang Tong commanded icily, his expression changing. At first, he had not cared about Ling Han. So what if they had beaten this kind of minor character? He could not even bother to give him a second look. So what if he was arrogant? As a follower of Lord Yang Hao, Why couldn't he be arrogant? It had to be known that Venerable Trinity had the intention to take Yang Hao as a personal disciple. If Yang Hao actually became the personal disciple of an elite of the Eternal River Tier, so what if he decided to do as he liked in the Majestic Heaven Sect? Hee hee. The four lapdogs all laughed coldly. Zhang Tong himself was an overbearing person, and they were used to acting arrogant by his side. They had absolutely no idea what the word reserved meant. Those around them quickly stepped back, fearing that they would be dragged in. That was Zhang Tong. Who would dare to bother with other people's business like this? Furthermore, they were not disciples of the Majestic Heaven Sect, so what basis did they have to interfere in this matter? Humph, what intolerable bullies. Just at this moment, a woman in green leaped out of the crowd. You are all merely a bunch of lackeys, and you still dare to be so arrogant. Zhang Tong took one look at her, and couldn't help but look stunned. She was actually an exquisite beauty. Her hair fell like waterfall, and she had a complexion fairer than snow. Her features were incredibly delicate, especially those large eyes. It was as if they could speak, and were filled with the mischief of a young girl. His heart throbbed involuntarily, and he asked, "Miss, how may I address you? What do you care who I am? I cannot bear to see bullies who like to bully others as they like." The beauty in green declared with her head held high like a proud swan. Junior sister. Another man forced his way out. His figure was tall, and he was amazingly sturdy. However, he did not appear overbearing. Instead, he gave off a cowering vibe. On one side, he bowed repeatedly towards Zhang Tong and his four lackeys as he said, "Apologies, apologies. This is my junior sister disciple. She is rash in her speech and actions, so please do not fault her. Please bear with her." As everyone watched this, they all shook their heads secretly. The personalities of these two fellow disciples were really two extremes of the spectrum. One disdained evil like it was her personal enemy, while the other was cowardly and timid. Yet Zhang Tong smirked coldly. "With just an apology and asking me to bear with her, you think you can stay out of this matter?" "That, young Master Zhang, what do you want to do?" the sturdy man asked. "Since you have offended me, you naturally have to make amends and apologize. Why don't we go have a drink and chat at the heavenly distant restaurant later?" Zhang Tong's eyes were fixed on the beauty in green, his heart itching. The masses naturally understood in a flash. As men, how could they not read between the lines? Zhang Tong wanted to have that woman. The sturdy man was hesitant. "Senior brother, he is only a lackey. Why do we have to be afraid of him?" the beauty in green asked, fuming. "Junior sister, how many times have I told you? Don't cause trouble, don't cause trouble." Sigh. The sturdy man sighed, but just as the masses thought that he was about to compromise, he suddenly boldly went into an attack posture and declared, "No one can humiliate my junior sister." At this instant, he really had an awe-inspiring presence, without the slightest bit of cowardice from before. Zhang Tong couldn't help but laugh loudly and said, "So it turns out you're an idiot. Apprehend him." He stretched out a finger to point at the large man. He was sure that as long as this person was apprehended, this beauty in green would definitely be his to order around as he desired. Now that the four lackeys had received their command, they would naturally not have the time to deal with Ling Han. Instead, they pounced at the sturdy man like wolves. Previously, the tall man had looked like he was afraid of trouble, but when it really came to a point when there was no retreat, he revealed his fierce side. With a shake of his fists, he slammed them together. Suddenly, a terrifying wave of power was created. His fists swelled. Previously, they had only been the size of clay basins. Though they were still big, it was still within normal range. But now, they were at least 3 times bigger than the head. They had also turned an ash color, flickering with a metallic light. Wang, his arms also waved, like they were waves of water. The ripples continued from the wrist to his shoulder, and after every ripple, there would be another divine pattern added to his fists, and they became even stronger than before. What kind of martial arts technique was this? It was quite interesting. Ling Han watched from the sidelines. He was in no rush to interfere. Xiao, the four lackeys had already pounced over, and they each made their move. Pong, 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 pong. The sturdy man delivered a punch at an incredibly fast pace. He actually managed to unleash 4 punches in a single instant and exchanged a blow with each of the 4 lackeys. He seemed to have become a spring and was filled with elasticity. Thus, after he had shot out a punch, he made use of the rebound to quickly deliver the second punch. Ling Han watched closely. With every punch, one of the divine patterns on the tall man's fists would disappear, and his battle prowess would decline slightly. Interesting, the power of his punches would be weakened with the increasing number of times he delivered punches. However, he only had to pause for a while, and the power of his punches would again become stronger. His battle prowess fluctuated indefinitely. The sturdy man's cultivation level was in the late stage of the low extreme of Mountain River tier. Out of those 4 lackeys, 3 were on the same level as he, and the last was even stronger as he had reached the peak stage of the low extreme. Hence, the first punch from the large man was finally aimed at that person in the peak of the low extreme. This was his strongest blow. After a while, not only those watching from the sidelines could see everything clearly, but realization also dawned on even those 4 henchmen. Speed up the attack. Don't allow him to have a chance to recover the power in his punch. The attacks of the 4 came faster and faster, causing the sturdy man to deliver punches as much as they could. In this manner, even if the divine patterns on his fists would recover automatically, the rate of recovery would be far from catching up to the rate in which they were expended, so his attack power would naturally decline. I will not allow you to bully my senior brother. The beauty in green drew her sword, anger filling her expression. Chapter 1134, Ling Han's Reaction. Chapter 1134, Ling Han's Reaction. Miss, everyone's only sparring. There's no need to make such a fuss, Zhang Tong said with a smile. He pressed his hand outward, and the beauty in green trembled uncontrollably as if she had been struck by a heavy pressure. She was barely able to maintain her balance. Zhang Tong was at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, while the beauty in green was only at the early stage of the low extreme. The difference in their cultivation level was like an insurmountable gulf. "Junior sister," the sturdy man cried in alarm. However, the 4 lackeys had already found a way to counter his battle technique and thus suppress him. That being the case, how could he help the beauty in green? "Is this really the Majestic Heaven Sect?" someone murmured softly. "How can their disciples be so arrogant? There's nothing we can do about this. Whose fault is it that we're not disciples of the Majestic Heaven Sect? Even if the Majestic Heaven Sect wants to manage things, they'll only manage affairs internal to the sect. Sigh, I can't bear to watch on. Say, the most detestable person is actually that brat. It was clearly him who caused this matter. Yet he's standing there and watching on as if this has nothing to do with him. That's right, that brat is abominable." Many people directed their anger at Ling Han. They felt that he was an ungrateful wretch. Those 2 had clearly stepped out to help him, yet how did he react? He casually walked aside and acted as if the fight had nothing to do with him. Ling Han naturally heard their comments. However, he simply ignored them and acted as if he hadn't heard anything. He wanted to gauge the potential of the sturdy man. He wanted to see whether he could find an opportunity to turn the tables on the lackeys. If he couldn't, he would be nothing more than just a reckless brute. "Junior sister," the sturdy man continued to shout. His concern for her couldn't be more obvious. "Senior brother, don't mind me," the beauty in green said with much difficulty. She was under immense pressure, and just saying this sentence caused her breathing to become labored. The sturdy man was enraged, and his black hair instantly stood on ends. A golden halo rose from beneath his feet before surging above his head and vanishing into the air. However, an additional 10 divine patterns materialized on his fists. His power climbed to an incredible level. Pong, 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 pong. The 4 lackeys wailed in agony as they were instantly sent flying. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. He was rendered a bit speechless by the sturdy man's actions. He had wanted to see how the sturdy man would deal with the desperate situation. In Ling Han's opinion, battles couldn't be won purely through brute strength. However, the sturdy man had proven otherwise in this case, unleashing his brute strength to the extreme. If increasing his divine patterns by 1 at a time wasn't enough, he would increase them by 10 at a time. Doing this would definitely place a huge burden on the sturdy man. However, he appeared especially mighty at this moment, and there was almost an aura of invincibility about him. "Release my junior sister," the sturdy man roared. He charged toward Zhang Tong. "Humph, what a fool." Zhang Tong raised his arm and made a pressing action toward the sturdy man. Wang. His origin power formed into countless lengths of chains that intertwined into a net and enveloped the sturdy man. The difference in their cultivation level was far too large. In fact, even Ling Han would be no match for a consummate level cultivator if he were suppressed back to the low extreme. Only 10-star geniuses would be able to achieve such a feat. They were freaks, and their battle prowess would be on par with the late stage of the consummate level once they advanced to the low extreme. Senior brother, the beauty in green cried in alarm. "Don't worry, I won't hurt him too much." Zhang Tong chuckled and said, "Miss, can you tell me your name now?" The beauty in green glowered at Zhang Tong, an unyielding look on her face. Zhang Tong wasn't angered by her answer, or rather the lack thereof. He turned to the 4 lackeys who had just crawled up and said, "Beat that person however he just beat you for." A sinister smile appeared on their faces, and they answered, "Understood, young Master Tong." "Don't." The beauty in green's expression changed drastically. "How can this person be so despicable?" Zhang Tong laughed loudly and said, "Miss, your name." This beauty in green was clearly a young lady who had barely any life experience. Thus, he naturally had a stranglehold on her. "I am called." The beauty in green kept her eyes wide open in an attempt to stop her tears from falling. She felt extremely vexed and angry. "Heh." Ling Han finally stepped forward and said, "How can this lady's name be revealed to such a low life? Won't that be an insult to this lady's name?" He stopped the beauty in green from speaking. Zhang Tong's expression darkened. He had already gained full control of the situation, yet his rhythm was actually ruined by this brat. He humphed coldly and said, "What are you 4 waiting for? Hurry up and kill him." He squinted his eyes as a malicious killing intent rose from his body. Did they really think that he didn't dare to kill them? How naive. The Majestic Heaven sect wasn't a charity, and these people were more so not disciples of the sect. As such, their deaths would be completely meaningless. The 4 lackeys had just suffered a beating at the hands of the sturdy man, and this had left them feeling ashamed and humiliated. However, the appearance of Ling Han gave them a chance to win their face back. They didn't think that Ling Han was strong, and the 4 of them slowly encircled him. This brat is finally showing some backbone. It's useless, though. So what if he can defeat those 4 people? Zhang Tong's already at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. How many people in the younger generation can defeat him? Indeed, the genuine prodigies have already been accepted into the Majestic Heaven sect. Moreover, Zhang Tong had been a key disciple back in the day, and he was also a prodigy among prodigies. When battling against those at the same cultivation level, only the seeds were able to defeat him. Everyone shook their heads in disappointment. The result of this battle was already decided. However, who told this brat to be so blind that he challenged Zhang Tong? Everything would have been fine if he had just moved aside for Zhang Tong. It wasn't as if he would lose a chunk of his flesh or anything. The 4 lackeys each lunged over from a different direction. Their expressions were sinister, and it was clear that they all had a large amount of blood on their hands. Ling Han shook his head. He then raised a hand and snapped his fingers. Shio, 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 shio. 4 bursts of sword chi surged outward. Although he had simply formed these using his fingers, these 4 bursts of sword chi possessed a supreme might that made it feel as if heaven and earth were collapsing. Ling Han had used the power of regulations. While he had been in the large tomb, he had received inspiration from the sword strike that he had needed to decipher. He had pondered over it under the reincarnation tree, and now that so much time had passed, he had naturally developed a deeper understanding of it gradually. Now, he only needed to snap his fingers, and his attacks would be filled with overwhelming sword intent. Not only that, but it would also contain the power of regulations. Pa, 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 pa. There were 4 crisp cracks, and the heads of the 4 lackeys exploded at almost exactly the same moment. Their divine sense was instantly ripped to shreds. A deathly silence fell over the surroundings. This youth looked to be fairly gentle and easygoing, yet his attack had been incredibly resolute and deadly. In fact, he hadn't even given the lackeys a chance to beg for their lives. Perhaps these 4 lackeys were completely insignificant. However, who was Zhang Tong? He was Yang Hao's follower and someone who had once been a key disciple. He could stay by Yang Hao's side, and as a result, he could occasionally listen to lectures on the great Tao given by elites. Could his battle prowess not be terrifying? Although he hadn't reached the Sun-Moon tier yet, he was definitely one of the strongest cultivators in the Mountain River tier. Sigh. Everyone shook their heads in pity. This youth was far too rash, and he had clearly not considered the consequences. Initially, he had every opportunity to protect himself. If he hadn't gone too far, Zhang Tong wouldn't necessarily go after him himself. But now? If Zhang Tong didn't kill Ling Han, what face would he have? Humph. I underestimated you. Zhang Tong said coldly. There was a piercing look in his eyes. He had sensed Ling Han's powerful strength the moment that he attacked. He definitely wasn't as ordinary as he looked. However, Zhang Tong was unafraid. He had been accepted as a key disciple before, and he had possessed a power of 5 almost 6 stars then. He was more so a follower of Yang Hao now, and he was thus able to listen to the explanations of Tao provided by great elites. As such, his battle prowess had naturally grown even stronger. He now possessed a battle prowess of 7 stars. Who could challenge him? Chapter 1135. There's always someone stronger. Chapter 1135. There's always someone stronger. You're quite courageous, huh? You even dare to kill someone from the Majestic Heaven Sect. Zhang Tong said in a baleful voice. Ling Han shook his head while laughing loudly and said, Wrong. You're merely a lackey, and the people I killed were lapdogs of a lackey. So, what does this have to do with the Majestic Heaven Sect? Zhang Tong faltered for a moment. Just then, it was his lackey who had said that the 5 of them weren't from the Majestic Heaven Sect. That being the case, the rules of the Majestic Heaven Sect naturally didn't apply to them. As such, what did it matter if they killed others? Now, however, Ling Han was using the words of his own lackey against him. It was just that Ling Han was far too unvirtuous. Every sentence he spoke was filled with the words lackey and lapdog. He stared at Ling Han and said, You're correct. If one is powerful enough, they can naturally do as they wish. However, if I decide to act, how many strikes of mine do you think you can block? Oh, are you very powerful? Ling Han picked his ears. He appeared as relaxed as he could be. Zhang Tong humphed and said, I'm at the peak stage of the Mountain River tier, and my power can surpass 5 stars. My battle prowess can surpass 7 stars. What? The surrounding onlookers clasped their heads in shock. Was this even possible? Even 5-star geniuses only existed in the legends. Yet, Zhang Tong claimed that just his power alone could already surpass 5 stars. His battle prowess was even more insane, and was able to surpass a whopping 7 stars. If this were true, why was he still a follower? He was definitely talented enough to become a seed. However, Ling Han knew that cultivation was like rowing a boat upstream. It would float backward if it didn't advance. Perhaps Zhang Tong possessed a power of 5 stars at the moment. However, there was no guarantee that he would be able to maintain this power of 5 stars after advancing to the Sun-Moon tier. Perhaps his power would fall to 4 stars, or maybe even 3 stars. This was similar to how Ling Han had formed 5 mountains and rivers and could attain a pinnacle power of 10 stars. If he didn't form 5 suns and moons after advancing to the Sun-Moon tier, his power would end up falling to 9 or even 8 stars. If he were only able to form 4 heavenly bodies at the heavenly body tier, his power would continue to fall, perhaps going down to 7 or even 6 stars. Thus, the number of stars that one could surpass wasn't set in stone. Moreover, the higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it would be to maintain a high number of stars. This was because keeping the same number of stars would require one to cultivate to an extremely high level in each major tier. A power of 5 stars? Ling Han said with a faint smile. A power of 5 stars was indeed very powerful. However, he had already possessed a power of 6 stars before forming 5 mountains and rivers. Right now, his power was at an astonishing 7 stars. Although there was only a difference of 1 star, there was a huge leap in quality going from the 6th to 7th star. This qualitative change could only be achieved if one formed 5 mountains and rivers. This was similar to how the last 3 stars in the Shattering Void tier could only be bestowed by heaven and earth. Are you afraid now? Zhang Tong chuckled coldly and said, kneel down and kowtow to me, and pledge yourself to me as your master. In light of the fact that cultivation is not easy, I'll take pity on you and accept you as my servant. Ling Han shook his head and said, you're too full of yourself. Fine, you can attack me now. I'm done speaking nonsense with trash such as yourself. I need to dispose of you quickly lest you delay my proper matters. Pooh! The onlookers almost spat their tongues out in astonishment. You're already in such a perilous situation, yet you're still running your mouth? That's a 7-star genius. He's basically invincible in the mountain river tier. Although such a prodigy is only a follower, just how prodigious is Yang Hao? Is he an 8-star genius? Or perhaps a 9-star genius? 10-star genius? You're seeking death. Zhang Tong finally couldn't hold back anymore. He raised his right hand and lashed out at Ling Han. He had only thrown this strike casually as he was far too confident in himself. He was sure that this strike would end everything. Ling Han simply snapped his fingers again. Xiao! A burst of sword light surged outward, so dazzling that it illuminated the heavens. Aya! Zhang Tong clasped his hand as he retreated. Blood dripped from his fingers and pitter-pattered onto the ground. The onlookers almost spat their tongues out again. They were completely lost for words. Zhang Tong was a 7-star genius, one that had reached the peak stage of the mountain river tier, no less. Yet, he had actually been wounded by a simple snap of that person's fingers. How could they accept this? Why you? Zhang Tong was stunned. He raised his right hand, only to see that a hole had been made in it. The sight of this bloody hole sent a harrowing chill through his body. Although his strike had only been casual, Ling Han's strike had also been similarly casual. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem like his opponent had used any secret technique. However, the might of his opponent's strike had been far above that of his. How can such a frightening prodigy appear on such a day? Haven't the top prodigies already been accepted into the sect? Zhang Tong was indeed arrogant and domineering, but was he brainless? Of course not. He had been certain that no super genius would appear today, and as such, it was his chance to act haughty and domineering. One had to remember that he had once been a key disciple. Moreover, he was already at the peak stage of the mountain river tier. It could be said that even many of the seeds were no match for him. The difference in their cultivation level was too large, after all. However, he had come across a powerful opponent now. You what? Haven't you learned your lesson yet? Ling Han's voice was cold, and he continued, in fact, there's no need for you to learn any lesson, because you won't live to see the future. Bullsh *T. Zhang Tong roared loudly as he slapped his chest. A soft green glow appeared, and a small green cauldron appeared within the light. However, this green cauldron immediately started to spin and grow larger, eventually transforming into a giant cauldron that measured 30 meters in height. Suppress him! Zhang Tong roared. Tens of thousands of green aura strands instantly flowed down from the green cauldron and surged toward Ling Han. Each strand of green aura transformed into a large snake that weighed as much as a mountain. They hadn't reached Ling Han yet, but the indescribable might that they exuded was already causing the land to tremor. This was a remarkable god tool. Emerald Cliff Cauldron, someone exclaimed. This is Yang Hao's supreme treasure. He actually bestowed it upon Zhang Tong? What? Emerald Cliff Cauldron? That's a Sun-Moon tier god tool. It's rumored to be a level 8 god tool, and it ranks highly even when compared to other Sun-Moon tier god tools. No, that isn't the Emerald Cliff Cauldron. It's only a replica. Otherwise, would we still be able to stand here and spectate the battle? You're right. If it were the genuine Emerald Cliff Cauldron, just a strand of its aura would be enough to suppress all of us. Even if it's only a replica, it's still extremely terrifying. It can probably rank among the top few mountain river tier god tools. Can't you see that Zhang Tong is even using his precious blood to nurture it? This means that he can't control it using his own raw power. He has to feed it his blood, and as such allow the god tool to become a part of him. Only by doing so can he use this god tool. That person is going to suffer. Boom! The large snakes surged down with the green light, and it was as if countless great stars were crashing down from the sky. The ground continued to shake violently, and the commotion that it caused was petrifying. Zhang Tong smiled coldly. That brat was indeed powerful, had actually forced him to activate the replica Emerald Cliff Cauldron. However, everything was about to end. What mountain river tier cultivator would be able to stand up against the combined power of him and the replica Emerald Cliff Cauldron? What? His expression changed drastically in the next instant. This was because his replica Emerald Cliff Cauldron was shaking in exertion. Even this can't suppress that brat? Pong! The green aura shot upward, revealing Ling Han's fist that was still surging toward the sky. The gigantic green cauldron swayed dangerously, and no more green aura was able to flow down from its body. Wah! Zhang Tong spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was linked to this replica Emerald Cliff Cauldron, meaning that he would also suffer a backlash should the cauldron be damaged. His body was burning, and he felt as if it were about to burst apart. The onlookers were stunned. Chapter 1136. I'll kill him if I want to. Chapter 1136. I'll kill him if I want to. The combined power of Zhang Tong and his replica of the Emerald Cliff Cauldron was actually unable to suppress Ling Han. One had to realize that Zhang Tong had once been a key disciple. However, he had been easily defeated by someone now. Didn't this mean that Ling Han possessed the strength of a seed? Gasp! How were they to believe this? Who on earth are you? Zhang Tong knew that he had kicked an iron plate. The person who'll kill you. Ling Han replied. He swung a fist toward Zhang Tong, and the fist was so magnificent that even heaven and earth lost their luster. Zhang Tong didn't dare face this attack head-on. He gritted his teeth and turned around to run. He had fled. Arrogant as Zhang Tong was, he had been forced to flee after exchanging just 2 strikes with Ling Han. The onlookers could barely believe their eyes. Thinking about it carefully, however, Zhang Tong had been forced onto his back foot during both of the exchanges. He had even activated his replica Emerald Cliff Cauldron the second time around. Yet this had failed to turn the tables in his favor. That being the case, why would he stay to fight? Ling Han smiled faintly. He snapped his fingers, and soaring sword intent transformed into a streak of light that shot toward Zhang Tong. The ensuing sword light was as quick as light. Zhang Tong raised his arms to block, yet how could he block something that was traveling at the speed of light? Pooh! The sword light slammed into his back and violently ripped him into 2 pieces. The onlookers wet their pants in fright. Someone as powerful as Zhang Tong had been sliced in 2 by a casual sword light attack resulting from a snap of that person's fingers. Ling Han was extremely satisfied. His strike had been a combination of the fast technique and the power of regulations, and it was because of this that it had been so quick and powerful. However, the fast technique by itself would be quicker, while the power of regulation by itself would be more damaging. He had indeed combined these 2 techniques together. However, it was also clear that he hadn't unleashed the full potential of either of the 2 foundation techniques. This was good news. This signified that the combination technique could still become stronger. Meanwhile, Zhang Tong still wasn't dead yet. The vitality of mountain river tier cultivators was tremendous, and Zhang Tong extended his arms to piece the two halves of his body back together. He furiously channeled his origin power in order to prevent excessive blood loss as he did this. His vitality would suffer a huge blow if he lost too much blood. He coughed blood and said, "Sir, don't you think you're going too far? You have to realize that my master is Yang Hao." "I know," Ling Han said with a nod. However, he immediately launched another sword light toward him. "Fuck," Zhang Tong swore in his mind. "What the fuck do you know? I've already said that Yang Hao is my master, yet you still dare to attack?" The crowd suddenly erupted into a frenzy at this moment. This commotion wasn't just traveling through the spectators of this battle, but rather through everyone at the foot of the mountain. There were at least 100,000 people calling out together, and this instantly gave rise to noise that shook heaven and earth. This was because the seeds who were planning to pick followers had finally arrived. Everyone had been waiting for this moment, so they naturally shouted at the top of their lungs in order to attract the attention of the seeds. They hoped that the seeds would favor them and thus select them as a follower. A total of 20 seeds had arrived, with the men being handsome and the women being beautiful. They were all extremely young, yet all of them exuded a powerful aura. A youth in green humphed coldly and said, "Humph, what a bunch of trash. Why do I have to select trash to follow by my side?" He appeared especially arrogant. He was only at the medium extreme of the mountain river tier, and this cultivation level definitely couldn't be considered high. However, the fact that he had become a seed of the Majestic Heaven Sect revealed that he definitely possessed a supreme talent. The sect had taken a fancy to his potential, not his current cultivation level. "I second that. Let's go back," a young woman said. There was a dab of cinnabar on her forehead, and this made her appear even more beautiful. "Huh? It seems like there's a commotion over there." A red-robed male suddenly pointed toward the location of Ling Han and Zhang Tong's battle. "That's Zhang Tong," the youth in green said. However, a look of displeasure instantly spread across his face, and he said, "Someone actually dares to provoke the follower of Senior Brother Yang? I need to see who has such gall." He leaped up and dashed toward the location of Ling Han and Zhang Tong. The crowd instantly parted to let him pass. Who dared to ask to be his follower at this moment? Doing so would be to seek a beating. The youth in green observed the situation and immediately shouted, "Stop! Young Master Fu!" Zhang Tong shouted in excitement. It was as if he had seen his savior. He was a seed. He would definitely be safe if young Master Fu stood up for him. Pu. However, his excitement had come too early. Ling Han showed no signs of stopping, and he immediately unleashed another burst of sword light that smashed his head into bits. This time, Zhang Tong's divine sense was ruthlessly obliterated. Even Genesis tier saints wouldn't be able to revive him. "You!" The youth trembled in fury. He had already shouted at him to stop, yet that person had actually ignored him. How audacious. He deserved to die 10,000 times over. "Are you going to end your own life, or do I have to help you end it?" he said coldly. "Dumb C***" Ling Han sneered. He then continued to walk forward. Very well. Very well." The youth in green pointed at Ling Han, yet Ling Han simply walked past him as if he didn't exist. This infuriated him even more, and he extended an arm to grab at Ling Han. "Do you know who I am? I'm Fu Liangye, the imperial grandson of the great heaven Majestic Empire." Ling Han didn't turn around, and instead simply snapped his fingers. "Pa!" A bloody hole instantly appeared on Fu Liangye's palm. "Ah!" he shrieked in pain. The surrounding people all became pale with fright. This person was a little too fearless, wasn't he? Not only had he killed Yang Hao's follower because he had wanted to, but he had even attacked and wounded a seed. "How brave of you," Fu Liangye said with a dark expression. "You're taking advantage of your higher cultivation level to bully me, aren't you?" He was only at the medium extreme of the mountain river tier, so there was no way he could battle against a cultivator at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, regardless of how prodigious he was. He had only dared to stand out because of his special status was a seed of the Majestic Heaven Sect. and also the imperial grandson of the great heaven Majestic Empire. Ling Han ignored him and continued to walk forward. He was heading where the other seeds were all standing. He could already see that person, the target of his trip. She was the 9th King Hu Feiyun. This absent-minded woman was currently dozing off, and it was as if she hadn't had enough sleep. She was starkly different from the other mighty and haughty-appearing seeds. Ling Han truly didn't understand how she had been chosen as a seed. After being wounded by Ling Han, Fu Liangye didn't target him anymore. In any case, this was the territory of the Majestic Heaven Sect, so there was nowhere that Ling Han could run. He followed Ling Han through the crowd, eventually arriving back at where he had just been. Humph! Dogs should remain where dogs should remain. Is this a place that you can come to? The young woman with the dab of cinnabar on her forehead scolded. Her face was filled with utter contempt. She was Gan Shiyun, a member of the Gan clan from the 100-bird Majestic Empire of the Peacegate planet. The Gan clan was a super powerful force of the 100-bird Majestic Empire, and they even possessed elites at the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. Even the imperial family had to appease them through marriages. Thus, Gan Shiyun was, in effect, no different from a princess. This naturally resulted in her becoming incredibly haughty. Although she was beautiful, her beauty was nothing compared to Shui Yinyu's. In fact, Shui Yinyu's disposition was countless times more attractive than hers. Not to mention, Ling Han had spent 2 years alone with Empress Luanxing. What other beauty could still attract his gaze? He ignored her words and headed straight for Hu Feiyun. Detestable, Gan Shiyun said with a cold humph. She waved her hand and summoned a whip before immediately whipping it at Ling Han. Divine patterns glowed in the air. It was evident that this whip was a god tool. Her cultivation level was much higher than that of Fu Liangye, was at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. The might of her whip strike was astounding. Chapter 1137, Goddess Furnace. Chapter 1137, Goddess Furnace. She was a super genius who was no weaker than Xiao Cixi, and Xiaowuquer power had already reached 6 stars. She was at the peak stage of the Mountain River tier, and her power was 6 stars above this level. Just how terrifying was this? Swoosh! The winds and clouds swirled under the effects of the whip, and it was as if a gaping hole were going to be torn in the sky. She was different, very different. Although Fu Liangye was also a seed-level genius, his cultivation level was still too low at the moment. Thus, he was nowhere near the level of Gan Shiyun. Ling Han knew that the him from 2 years ago would only be able to withstand the power of this whip with his physique. Now, however, he casually raised his hand and brought 2 of his fingers together. Pa! The whip was easily caught between his 2 fingers. Pooh! Countless people almost spat their tongues out in shock upon seeing this. Gan Shiyun was a seed-level genius of the Majestic Heaven Sect. Moreover, she was also at the peak stage of the Mountain River tier. Theoretically speaking, she should have been invincible in the Mountain River tier at the very least. No one should have been able to suppress her. However, this youth had casually caught her whip, and his expression was as if he still had a lot of strength to spare. How large was the gap between them? Gan Shiyun's eyes also bulged in shock. A frosty chill gripped at her heart, and she thought, how can this youth be so powerful? He didn't use any secret techniques, and he relied solely on his power to catch my whip. This signified that his power was far above hers. Moreover, his physique was also freakishly sturdy. Otherwise, one would definitely get injured after catching a god tool like that, regardless of how strong their power was. However, could such a person really exist in this world? If they did, shouldn't they be a seed of the Majestic Heaven Sect? Ling Han let go of the whip and said, one shouldn't be too domineering. Being kind to others is also equivalent to leaving a path of retreat for oneself. He turned toward Hu Feiyun with a smile and said, 9th King, there's a letter for you. Hu Feiyun seemed a little dazed as she accepted the letter from him. She speedily read through it, and then asked in confusion, Big Sister sent you over to become my follower? That's right, Ling Han said with a nod. What? The people nearby were all stunned upon hearing their exchange. This person who could casually catch Gan Shiyun's whip strike with 2 fingers was actually going to become Hu Feiyun's follower. Although the people here all wished to become followers of the seeds, this was largely because they weren't talented enough to become disciples of the Majestic Heaven sect. Otherwise, how many people would be willing to become servants? However, judging by Ling Han's abilities, he could have definitely qualified as a seed-level disciple. So, why was coming here to become a follower? Even if he had missed the Majestic Heaven sect's recruitment period, couldn't he just wait for the next recruitment period? It was only 100 years away, an insignificant amount of time to immortals. The onlookers couldn't understand his actions. Then, they all looked toward Hu Feiyun in envy. Now that she had obtained such a powerful follower, her position in the sect would definitely rise to an even greater level. Who are you? Hu Feiyun was still as ditzy as always. Ling Han smiled and said, Han Lin. Han Lin, Han Lin, Ling Han. Hu Feiyun's eyes suddenly lit up, the air of ditziness completely leaving her. A smile blossomed on her face. Her appearance was still a bit ditzy, though, and this filled her smile with the innocence and adorable nature of a young girl. Ling Han smiled faintly. Although this woman was a bit ditzy, she wasn't stupid at all. She had guessed his identity from his alias alone, and this was enough to show the quickness of her reactions. Detestable! Gan Shiyun shouted in fury. Flames surged from her body and weaved into a dense field of divine patterns, making her appear like a goddess of flames. Ling Han turned around and chided. Hasn't anyone told you that it's rude to interrupt the conversations of others? That's right. Hu Feiyun concurred. Her personality hadn't changed at all. There was a look of rage on Gan Shiyun's pretty face. These 2 people were working together to ridicule her. Disciples of the Majestic Heaven sect obviously weren't allowed to kill each other, yet there was no such restriction for mere followers. Thus, no matter how talented he was, what did it matter if she killed him? The dab of cinnabar between her brows flashed, and a furnace surprisingly flew out. Its emergence instantly caused the temperatures in the surrounding to soar. Crap, that's the Gan clan's goddess furnace. It's a heavenly body-tier precious treasure, and it can incinerate all life. No, this is only a replica. The real goddess furnace is definitely still at the Gan clan. That still doesn't change the fact that it's extremely powerful. In fact, it's almost at the Sun-Moon tier. The surrounding onlookers frantically retreated. A seed at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier was unleashing her might, and even fellow seeds would have to draw on their full power if they were to battle against her. Thus, what right did they have to spectate the battle from a close distance? Ling Han shuffled over to block Hu Feiyun behind him. Meanwhile, the 9th king stuck her head over Ling Han's shoulder in confusion and said, Why is she so angry? The people in the surroundings all wore strange expressions. Will Gan Shiyun vomit blood upon hearing this? Gan Shiyun didn't vomit blood. However, her pretty face darkened considerably, and she instantly activated her goddess furnace. Boom! Countless bursts of flames soared into the air and intertwined to form sheets of dazzling divine patterns. This was a terrifying sight. Roaring flames incinerate the heaven, she roared. She smacked the goddess furnace, and the lid of the furnace instantly flew up, releasing a green flame that surged toward Ling Han. Ling Han activated an origin power shield. His physique was obviously powerful enough to resist these flames, yet his clothes would definitely be burned to ash. If he allowed these flames to hit him, he would definitely be stripped naked. He naturally couldn't let this happen. I've got to buy some precious treasure clothes, Ling Han mumbled to himself. They don't need to possess much defensive ability, but they definitely have to be resistant to fire and water. Die! Gan Shiyun controlled her goddess furnace and charged toward Ling Han. Since the surging flames couldn't kill Ling Han, she would absorb him into the furnace and refine him using its divine flames. That ought to incinerate him into ashes, right? Wong. The goddess furnace expanded and bore down on Ling Han. There was a deafening noise as the goddess furnace slammed into the ground. Meanwhile, Ling Han was nowhere to be seen. He had been trapped inside the furnace. Ha 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 ha. Gan Shiyun roared with laughter. Ling Han had been trapped inside the goddess furnace, so what use was it that he possessed an incredible power? Being incinerated into ashes was his only fate. Pong! A fist-shaped dent appeared on the lid of the furnace, causing the entire furnace to shudder. Pong! Immediately afterward, another fist-shaped dent appeared. Then a third, a fourth. Pong! 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 The goddess furnace instantly lost its original shape, becoming extremely irregular in appearance. Everyone's mouth gaped open in shock. In fact, their jaws hung so low that even a fist could be stuffed into their mouths. It was clear that Ling Han was unleashing his might. Ganshurian had no option but to continue. "Refine him!" she shouted frantically. She unleashed the full power of the God Tool and attempted to refine Ling Han using the supreme divine flames. Even the seeds went pale upon witnessing this sight. What kind of freak is that person? He's already been trapped inside the goddess furnace, yet he still hasn't been refined yet. Not only that, but he's even as energetic as can be. The goddess furnace has almost been destroyed by him. Although this isn't the real goddess furnace, it's still an extremely terrifying mountain river tier god tool. This is simply unbelievable. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.